The order, this is the school board meeting of Independent School District 271. Tonight is Monday, February 27th, 2017 at 7 p.m. We are in the Arlene Bush boardroom. All board members are present. We have one of our school board representatives from Jefferson. We're hoping that our representative from Kennedy shows up shortly. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I get an approval of the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend the agenda. I would like, under the Part B agenda, I would like to add an item number 9, which will be Legislative Priorities 2017.
Second.
And is there any discussion on that? All those who are in favor of amending the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And now we will approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor of approving the agenda, or is there any discussion of the agenda now that it has been amended? None. All those in favor of approving the agenda now as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that brings us to recognition of student, staff, and public. We will call on our Jefferson student representative to give us a first update.
February has been a busy month at Jefferson, and the trimester is winding down. Bloomington Student Advisory Council is continuing to meet every couple weeks, and we are gathering ideas on how we can effectively reduce class sizes. Student Council put on the blood drive a couple weeks ago, and 66 units of blood were donated, which was very close to our goal. JCorp Benefit Dinner has been moved to March 6th, and tickets can still be purchased for $15. The varsity cheer team performed in Florida for nationals, and they received first place for their game day routine. The hockey team are the Metro West champions, and they have their section championship game this Thursday. Science Olympiad received first place at regionals. Jefferson's Wind Ensemble performed at the Minnesota Music Educators Association Conference recently. Jefferson, Kennedy, and Richfield students got together to talk about equity last Thursday. Jefferson and Kennedy's prom committee is starting to plan prom, which will be on May 12th. The student-directed one-act play is on March 23rd and 24th. Molly Roach was presented with the Athena Award that an outstanding senior female athlete receives every year. And 4 seniors, Robert Martz, Connor Meany, Ashley Neuenfeld, and Cherry Wang, all advanced to the finalist round of the 2017 National Merit Scholarship Program. Lastly, we have finals on March 9th and 10th, and then the final trimester will begin.
Thank you for that update. And now we will ask if there's anyone who would wish to address the school board on an item that is not on the agenda. I do have a sign-up list of some people, so I apologize because I will most likely mispronounce the name, so I'll just say letters. Mr. Abraham D., please. And then the next person up will be Mr. Thomas Palava.
Hi, my name is Abdurrahim Diri. I'm the President of Somali Parent Network here in Bloomington, Minnesota, School District 271. As you might be aware, we had a dialogue. We opened a dialogue to the superintendent and Assistant Superintendent Eric Malpe. Unfortunately, our last meeting, we thought it was productive, and it collapsed at the last minute when the superintendent, the way we see it, entertained us and brushed by ignoring our request, family input. We requested through email, which we have asked if we could see the final policy proposal that he was going to present to the board meeting today. And to our knowledge, he added 2 more policies that were not being discussed or taking a family input. We as a Somali Parent Network asking to the board and the chairperson to postpone and allow us to solve our difference and agree the language that's in the policy you are getting ready to vote and approve it today. I also want to share to the board our sorrow and sadness about, sorry I'm emotional, about these policies that you will be voting today. The reason we are objecting this policy is that there are so many reasons, so many incidents that has taken place since the election, which I can't elaborate here all of it, but I can give you a taste of it. Specifically, first, I want to ask Rick, the chairperson. He's the ambassador of Kennedy High School and Oak Grove Middle School. I want to ask if he has any knowledge or have seen any kind of report or gotten from either the superintendent, Les, or the principals for those schools. As you are aware, there was a white female student who took the Snapchat to insult the Somalian students, their origin, their belief, their religion. After she posted on the Snapchat, immediately it spread the whole district, and when the Somalian student responded, they have been punished and suspended for 5 days. But the perpetrator, the white female student, was advised to stay at the school, at home, by the principal until the incident cools off. Here in this building, there's a pool. This pool, without supervision, a Somalian student got almost dead by drowning. Not too long ago, a white student submerged him and kept him in the water. Unfortunately, when asked the Somalian student if he could pick, he said, I couldn't pick because he was unconscious. Again, the same building, the assistant basketball coach told the Somalian student, you are not fit to play. That means you are fat, and you cannot be part of the basketball team. At Jefferson School, the Somalian female students have been harassed almost constantly every day. I'm sorry. They pull their hijab, the hair cover. If they report, nobody does anything. Because of these incidents and more that we could not list or mention here, we're asking the chairperson and the board to reconsider their vote and postpone. If you ignore us, we have other venue to take. We want to solve these differences before your final approval. One last, St. Paul School District, Minneapolis School District, Richfield, all stood by their students and assured that they don't tolerate any insult, abuse, or harass the students based on their affiliation, gender. They have posted the front page of their website and shared to the community leader, parents, and teachers also. I'm wondering why can't Bloomington School District Board and Superintendent and each board member could not do the same? And I'm sorry, I will use a harsh language. You're either incompetent or careless what's going on. If that's the case, we as Somali Parent Network are asking superintendent and school board to resign. We are sick and tired and not being listened. As you can see here, there are Hispanic community and parents who are going through the worst time based on this environment. We all need assurance to our children's future and their parents to show them that the district cares and will assure the students' safety and their education. Please don't take it lightly, and I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you again. Yeah. And I would like to give you this, if it's possible, if you can share with the board. That's the letter that we sent to the superintendent. I would really appreciate it.
Thank you for addressing the board. We will follow up, and if you would like, you're more than welcome to stay and listen during our discussion of the policy. That would bring the next person on the list. I have Mr. Palava, and then next would be Mr. Mike Polk. So, Mr. Palava.
I was here a couple months back, or last month back, about our problems with our daughter. It just keeps going downhill here. After hearing this guy's story, it opens up old wounds that I have with this school. My other stepdaughter was bullied out of Kennedy High School. 2 men sitting in this room took part in it and knew about it and did nothing about it. Swept it under the rug, basically, and pushed it off. Now my disabled daughter, who has learning disabilities and possible Asperger's, which she'll be diagnosed with next month, is being bullied by the teachers in the school district here. I have not received a phone call from the principal as of yet today. My wife just got off the phone with Mr. Fujitaki, and a bunch of lies on the phone. Getting sick of being ignored. I was ignored by the board. My wife sent an email to every board member 31 days ago. I finally got a response on the second email that I sent to Mr. Oliva. This is ridiculous. I was proud of this school district. I graduated here, same as you did. What has gone downhill? What is going on? Nobody listens to us. Right now we're going to be filing with the Minnesota Department of Education of a complaint of how our daughter's being discriminated against on the IDEA program with you guys. We missed a deadline for an IEP. It was never, the date we were supposed to have it done by the state was the 10th. The principal at the school never called us all week, emailed us twice about our daughter's attendance, but never emailed us about setting up an IEP meeting. There was one set up today. My wife was so mad today, she wanted me to be there. They never want to do it around my schedule. It's around their schedule. What's good for them? Well, I'm working class too. I can't always get off of work. Right now we're busy where I'm at. We're building a new hotel and convention center. We got a lot of stuff going on. I can't take time off of work. But to be ignored is it's got to stop. This board, all of you, need to stop ignoring people. Who makes you guys better than us? Who puts you above us? You're not. We vote you guys in. We pay you guys your small amount. And granted, you guys don't get paid a lot. I know how it is. I was a city worker and stuff. But we, the public, pay the taxes and we do the voting that puts you guys into power. And not to get an email for 31 days is pretty ridiculous. And now to be bullied by the administrative staff here, the principals and stuff like that, it's ridiculous. And after my stepdaughter losing out on an education, and now a kindergartner, this should be a time she's starting to learn and get used to school, is missing out on that because she's afraid to go to school because of what has happened. And we won't get a straight answer from Mr. Fujitaki about what actually happened. He gives us the runaround. When my wife called today, all he wanted to know was about why the IEP meeting was canceled and stuff, why we didn't make it. Obviously, she didn't get her phone message about rescheduling it and stuff like that. This is getting to the point beyond where it should be. And like I said, there are 2 men sitting in this room that know well about my stepdaughter. I'm not going to go into that right now, but maybe I might have to reopen it because this is ridiculous. After hearing this story of how the Somali people are getting treated, I took pride in Kennedy High School and Bloomington schools and Oak Grove. I spent a lot of time in this area, the shop area here and stuff. It's ridiculous. Now we're looking at moving out of the district, maybe moving to Farmington and stuff like that to get to Rosemont, and which is another good school district. But right now, it's ridiculous that we're being forced out of a school district again, twice. Now Mike reached out to us after last time I was here, and he's trying to help us too. Get our daughter where she wants to be, where she can learn, in the environment where she needs to be. We've been willing to put the past in the past, but the school is protecting its staff instead of its students.
Well, right now I'm not going to say much because I want to hear what the expanded family have to say. Then if you don't mind putting me back at the back, then I can respond to a lot of stuff that I'd like to say. Because this is important. And like you guys know that I ran on this 2 years ago for the school board, that if you don't take care of the community, this stuff will happen. and now you guys seeing what's going on. So I would like for the Hispanic family to speak before I can speak on behalf of what I have to say with the Somalian families and the Hispanic. And with,
We can certainly do that. So the name I have here, and please forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, Senora Ana Isabel Magana? Yeah. Am I close? Please, you can come address the board, please. If I said the name wrong, please correct me.
Muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Ana Isabel Magaña y vengo representando a la comunidad latina.
Good afternoon. My name is Ana Isabel Magaña, and I'm here representing the Hispanic community.
Apreciados miembros de la Junta Directiva Escolar, superintendente y personal administrativo y familias y audiencia en general.
Dear members of the school board, superintendent, administrative staff, families of the audience, and the public in general.
En nombre de la Asociación de Familias Latinas, me dirijo a ustedes.
I'm addressing to you in the name of the Hispanic Families Association.
Desde el pasado mes de noviembre, por incidentes ocurridos en las escuelas en contra de nuestros estudiantes latinos, hemos venido solicitando al señor superintendente una declaración por parte del distrito en contra de todo acto de discriminación por raza, estatus migratorio, nacionalidad, etc., para que nuestros estudiantes sean protegidos y se les brinde una educación libre de acoso y miedo.
Since last November, because of incidents that occurred in the schools against our Hispanic students, we have been asking the superintendent for a statement from the school district against any act of discrimination because of a race, immigration status, nationality, etc. So our students are protected and they are given a free education of harassment and fear.
Desde varias reuniones y por nuestra sugerencia, el superintendente aceptó revisar las pólizas existentes en el distrito, aunque en el website existe una nota en la cual el distrito declara que está trabajando en la revisión de 2 pólizas con nuestra participación. Queremos aclarar que las familias latinas y Asociación de Padres Latinos no ha recibido ninguna póliza o documento para ser revisada o proporcionar nuestros comentarios.
After several meetings, and because of our suggestion to the superintendent regarding the reviewing of the existing policies in the district, even though on the website exists a statement in which the district states that is working in the reviewing of 2 policies with our participation, we have to make clear that the Hispanic families and the Association of Hispanic Parents have not received any policy or document whatsoever to be reviewed, for our comments to be taken into account.
Revisando su website, anoche nos dimos cuenta de los puntos para la agenda de hoy, en la cual se presentarán pólizas nuevas y se recomendarán revisiones en otras pólizas. Lamentablemente, el distrito continúa tomando estas decisiones sin contar con nuestros comentarios.
Review your website. Last night, we made aware of 2 points that they will be discussed in today's agenda, in which 2 new policies will be presented and recommendations will be given to review other policies. Unfortunately, the district still taking decisions without taking our comments into account.
Tanto la administración como nosotros hemos dedicado tiempo en reuniones y conversaciones. Sin embargo, seguimos con la impresión que nuestras palabras, nuestra comunidad y la seguridad de nuestros hijos no son una prioridad para el distrito. Nuestros hijos van con miedo a la escuela todos los días.
Un segundo, por favor.
Yeah.
The administration as well as us, we have taken time in meetings and having a dialogue and conversations. However, we still are under the impression that our thoughts in our community and the safety of our children are not a priority for the district. Our children are still attending school with fear every day.
Ok. Hemos proporcionado al distrito comunicados de otros distritos para que los tomen como guía o ejemplo. Seguimos sin entender el por qué se rehúsan a emitir este comunicado, cuando al hacerlo esto ayudaría a prevenir incidentes de odio racial. Insistimos que además de pólizas con procedimientos claros, es de vital importancia que el distrito haga una declaración en la cual asegura la seguridad de todos los estudiantes. Aprovechamos esta oportunidad para pedir formalmente a la Junta Escolar y nuevamente al superintendente que emita el comunicado que amablemente hemos venido solicitando.
We have given the district a statement from other districts so they can be taken as a guide or as an example. We're still not understanding why they are refusing to provide this statement. When you give such a statement, this will help to prevent incidents of racial hatred. We insist that insist that the policies and procedures to be clear. That is very important that the district give a statement in which they will reassure the safety of all students. We've taken this opportunity to ask formally to this school board and, again, the superintendent to give an official statement that we've kindly been asking for some time.
Ok. Esperamos ser informados y educados sobre las pólizas y revisiones que ustedes piensan aprobar hoy. Una vez estudiamos estos documentos, por favor, infórmenos por email el procedimiento para incluir nuestros aportes en estas pólizas tan importantes.
We're hoping to be informed and educated regarding the policies and the revisions that you're thinking and approving today. Once we review these documents, please let us know by email the procedures in which our thoughts can be taken into account for these important policies.
Atentamente, Asociación de Padres Latinos de Bloomington, ISD 271.
Sincerely, the Associations of Hispanic Parents, Bloomington ISD 271.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you for sharing. And then, Mr. Polk, before you come up, I'll ask, is there anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I thought you were finished.
Sí. En este momento solamente quiero pasar una información a la Junta Directiva.
Right now, I'd like to pass some information to the school board.
Es todo por ahorita.
That's all for now.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the school board on a matter this evening? No? Seeing none, Mr. Polk, if you'd like to finish your thoughts. Or continue your thoughts, I should say.
All right. Thank you, I appreciate it. My thoughts is, from listening to the Spanish and the Somalian community, is that we have a long way to go. And with the policy that they're looking to have change, I think you guys should, instead of emailing them the policy, at your next meeting, have them come in and read it, and then help change some of this stuff in the policy, because you guys is writing the policy the way you guys want to see it, not the way the families want to see it. Another thing is, I want to know, how many of you guys really listened to what they were saying, or you just sitting here letting them blow it off their chest? because if the next policy is not written properly for the families of all the communities, this is going to continue on, you know, and it won't stop. And since I'm part of representing these families, and you guys know the things I do, that I won't stop until these families are satisfied and every kid in our district is getting the right education. And I'm doing some investigation on a lot of kids that have IEP, that see have they been treated the same way that Mr. Mike child been treated, because if so, there's a pattern that has to change. And the only way that's going to change is to find out who's making these rules. And another thing is when you're taking kids out of the classroom, don't you think you should let the parents know? And if the parents continue to ask why and don't get answers, don't you think you're covering something up? You know, and then when I come in and I ask the same questions, I know there are things you can't tell me, but there are things that you can tell me. If you don't want to tell me, at least tell the parents why you're removing their kids out of the classroom, especially if the kids got a disability where the doctors and everyone's saying she should stay in that classroom because she'll get anxiety and it just screws her up. So, and if the families send you guys emails and expect you guys to contact them, there's another problem. Like he said, we guys been voted into this position. And when the community reach out, don't you think they should be reached back instead of wait till the last minute until things get blown up like it is now? This is part of the families that here, but the next meeting you might have more, because this right here will get out. I don't know if you guys televising this. I think you should be, so the rest of the communities to know what's going on, because I think if you're not, you're really hiding something, because you don't want to reach out to these communities, the minority communities. That's what you got in here, right? So if you're not reaching out to them, like I said when I ran for the school board, this here going to continue. I'm going to be on the front line with them, making sure it continue, because these families need some support. They come for you guys for support. They voted you guys in, and then you turn your back on them. And we all say we're here for education for our kids, for their kids, and they getting their back turned on. So to a point, look at it in a personal way. Would you want your kids to feel this way? Would you want your parents to feel that way if you was treated that way? I shouldn't be put in a personal way like that, but sometimes make you think in a positive way to help out. And these families need help. And I'll be with them from thick and thin, because that's what I do. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Was there? We have one more. Thank you.
It's not on the same issue, though, so if there's anybody else who wanted to speak on the same issue. I'm hoping not to make a habit of this, just so you know. I am reading this at the request of Wendy Marchak, BFT President, as she is not able to attend this evening. Good evening, Superintendent Fujitaki, Chair Oliva, board members, cabinet, and listening audience. I am having Ann Robertson, colleague and Bloomington parent, read this request as I am unable to attend the meeting this evening. I feel this request is so important that I did not want to wait until the next school board meeting. As you know, in our current contract, an advisory committee was created in a memorandum of understanding. The intent of the committee, which was suggested by the BFT, was to create a committee of administrators and teachers to discuss issues of mutual benefit to improve our school district. The hope was that starting a dialogue would build trust and improve relationships as we tackle issues together. It has been a rocky start, as seen by the fact that we haven't even started. The intent of the advisory committee, as explained to our members, has changed since the vote on the last contract. Our members voted on the belief that this committee would contain voices from all levels of our district so that we can work on successful implementation of ideas and initiatives. Unfortunately, that was not the same interpretation of our district administration. The October 13 inside page even describes the interpretation that we voted on. Quote,
The agreement calls for the creation of an advisory committee of teachers and administrators to discuss labor and instructional program issues. I am here tonight to ask the school board for help. We need to move forward, but this is not going to happen without help. Just like we tell our students to ask for help when they need to, I am humbly here to ask for your help. We need a mediator or third party to help start the mending of relationships and to help structure a working advisory committee that satisfies both sides. A mediator would be inexpensive and probably free if we contact the Bureau of Mediation. Another idea would be to hire a consultant that both parties can agree on to help get the process started. As the president of BFT, I request that we employ a third party to help us get on the right track now before we start another negotiation cycle. I know that the top 3 issues on Superintendent Fujitaki that Superintendent Fujitaki shared with me and Carol Bennett, Vice President, were our top 3 priorities too. We have the issues. We just need some extra outside help to get us through the initial phase. I am sorry to miss this meeting tonight, and I would welcome any questions or comments to me directly when I return. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for addressing the board. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? Okay. It is the board's policy generally not to respond at the meeting, but we will follow up. We'll gather more information and follow up. The people that were discussing the policy, it will come up on the agenda here shortly. So at that time, we will have the discussion and maybe ask for more input. Now, I think that brings us now to the 12th grade government students. Government classes at school board meetings. A requirement of our 12th grade government classes is to observe a governmental meeting of some sort. Things that they may attend are city council meetings, school board meetings, courtroom proceedings, etc. The social studies curriculum guide identifies essential standards, one of which is to understand the role and influence of political processes and organizations by examining the role of interest groups, think tanks, the media, and public opinion on the political process and public policy formation. Are there any students here who are here to satisfy the requirements of their government class? Raise your hand. If you're here, please come up to the podium, state your name, and the school you attend, and your teacher. Don't be shy.
Hello, my name is Tyler. I'm from Jefferson High School, and my teacher is Mr. Carlson.
Hi, my name's Jeffrey Dolan. I attend Jefferson High School, and my teacher is Mr. Carlson as well.
Okay, thank you. At the close of the session or after 1 hour, whichever is shorter, you can ask for a signature on the agenda from any one of our administrative cabinet members sitting over here at the side. And if you don't have an agenda, it's those green pages that are over on the left. And if we're out, we can get you more. Let's see here. Speaking of which, I lost mine. I believe that brings us now to Part A. Would someone like to move the Part A of our agenda?
So moved.
Part A includes board business, field trip approvals, contracts, agreements, and finance. Is there any discussion about the Part A agenda? All those in favor of approving Part A as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, Part A passes. And that brings us to a resolution awarding the sale, determining the form and details, authoring the execution, delivery, and registration, and providing for the payment of general obligation facilities maintenance bonds, Series 2017A. We have, I believe, Rod Zivkovich and Gary Olson here with us. Would someone like to read this resolution?
Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271, State of Minnesota, as follows. 1, at a meeting held January 23, 2017, this board determined to sell and issue general obligation bonds of Independent School District number 271, the issuer or the district, in the total aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $24,720,000, the bonds. 2, the board, having been advised by Ehlers and Associates, Inc., its independent municipal advisor, has determined that the issues shall be privately sold after receipt of written proposals, is authorized pursuant to Minnesota statutes, Section 475.60, Subdivision 2, as amended. The board has publicly received and considered all proposals presented in conformity with the terms of proposals contained in the official statement, which are hereby ratified and confirmed in all respects and are incorporated herein by reference as though fully specified in this paragraph. Okay. The most favorable of such proposals is ascertained to be that of, I don't have the exact amount here.
Resolution is in the file with the new numbers.
In the file?
It's this one, right? 24,915.
It's
Oh.
completed in your folder.
I see. Apologize, I thought it was updated in this.
This one. All right, so
It's on the draft.
the principal amount is $24,915,000. And to purchase the bond, the purchaser to purchase the bonds at a price of, is this $83,572? Am I doing it right? Plus interest accrued to settlement, and upon the further terms and conditions set forth in the terms of proposal contained in the official statement and this resolution. Said proposal is hereby accepted, and the sale of the bonds is hereby awarded to said purchaser. 3, the chair and clerk are authorized and directed to endorse an acceptance on both copies of the most favorable proposal and to send 1 copy to the purchaser. The treasurer is directed to retain the good faith deposit of the purchaser pending delivery of the bonds and payment therefor, and the good faith deposits of other proposal makers shall forthwith be returned to them. I believe that's it.
We have a second.
Second.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. I'm looking at some math. At number 1, it says not to exceed 24,720,000, but the number is 24,915,000. Are we exceeding what we're asking? Am I missing that?
I can answer that. Basically, when we built the size of the bond issue, most underwriters were giving us premiums. They're paying more than and so the 24,720,000 was based on the assumption that we're going to get a premium. You're allowed under statute, if you offer a discount, which we did on these bonds, of just under $200,000, you can then increase the size of the bond issue by that offering of the discount. If we would not have done that, you would have been short in your construction fund. So the idea was, we're not trying to get you more money than you were planning on getting, but in order to get you closer to that, get you that dollar amount you were planning, we had to increase the size of the bond issue, and that is allowable under Minnesota statutes by that amount that you allowed for a discount.
I just want to make sure we weren't breaking our own our own rules. I should also mention we did update passwords on our email, and of course I forgot my brand new password, so I'm locked out of my own data. And I'm reading from paperwork. It's just that it's possible that the updated information is locked out of my brain right now.
Essentially, it's been over almost all summer and fall and into early spring. We've been getting premium bids on almost all our bonds, but in the last week or so, the market seems to have changed, and instead of giving us premiums, they're now giving us discounts.
So do we need to amend our resolution for the higher amount?
I think that's taken care of in the resolution itself, or should be.
Everyone agrees? Okay.
David, we okay with that?
I don't practice in this area, so I'm going to have to rely on your experts there.
All right.
Would it hurt anything to amend?
No.
Would it potentially hurt things if we didn't?
He says no.
Okay. I would say, if you're more comfortable amending it, there's no problem in doing that.
Well, I'll leave it to Mr. Bergstrom if you would like to.
Yeah, I think I'd be more comfortable amending it. I would have let it go if the numbers were reversed, but our not to exceed number is smaller than the one, we're actually exceeding what it says.
No,
So
I
just to-
understand.
So I'll amend it to allow the 24,915,000.
Okay, do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
We have a second by Mr. Bennett. Is there a discussion on that? Okay, so we'll vote to approve the amendment to the resolution. All those in favor of approving the, changing the principal amount to read not to exceed 24,915,000, was that correct in what you said? All those in favor of that signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so I'll turn it over to you for what do you have for us on this?
Well, Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, I'm pretty much going to turn it over to Gary Olson to give you an idea of what the bonding market was today and how our bonds came in or how the sales came in versus what was projected.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, basically, it was a very good day. We got 9 bids. We always like to see, we're always hoping for at least 3, and we got 9 bids on this one. The best bid came in at 3.65%. It was what we call a true interest cost compared to 3.96% that we had projected a month ago. So we came in almost 0.3%, about 0.3% under. In overall cost, that saved the district about $2 million in interest. That when you're borrowing $24 million, that 0.3% over that long period of time saved about $2 million in interest. So you do have a copy of the sale day report here. There's a lot of information in there. I'm not going to go over all that, but I think it's good news in that we were able to do this. You got lots of interest, and you got bids from all over the country: Chicago, Milwaukee, New York, Minneapolis, St. Petersburg, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina. So you got bids from all over the country. People are interested in your bonds. This is going to give you money, about just under $24 million that you can spend over the next 2 years on your facility maintenance projects. It was put together in a way, if you remember, this goes all the way back to, 2012, I think, when the board adopted a plan that said we're going to do $15 million a year in deferred maintenance projects. And the way we do that is every 2 years we sell bonds, and we have a mixture of bonds, and you also have a pay-as-you-go levy that goes with that. And the idea is we mix and match those in a way to maintain a constant tax rate. So in other words, we keep the tax rate each year the same as it was the previous year. If we have a little room, we can do more pay-as-you-go. If we're bumping up against that tax rate, we do a little bit more bonds and a little less pay-as-you-go. But we're able to, between the two of them, then keep your tax rate nice and flat. If you look at one of the last pieces here, there's a bar chart here, and you can see the idea is to keep that tax rate flat. This little thing here in the middle, we've only gone out 6 bond issues, once every 2 years, so we're out about 12 or 14 years. When you get to that point, you'll be selling more bonds. We just didn't project out that many bond issues, so that'll bring that back down to level with the other years. So we just thought going out 6 bond issues at this point was kind of speculative, as it was. It just didn't make sense to go out beyond that. But the idea again is keep everything level while you're able to spend the $15 million a year on maintaining your facilities. And then the last piece of the document is just the update from Standard & Poor's. So any questions?
Any questions from anyone? So the summary is we saved $2 million and we didn't have to increase any of the tax rate.
Correct.
Okay. Sounds good to me, yes. That's what I was going to say. All those in... Oh,
But we extended the maturity date.
Yeah, you've added bonds out in years where you farther out down the line, correct. But in this plan, goes all the way out and continue to sell bonds for 5 more issues after this, so another 10 years or more. And the idea, again, is to try and keep ahead of it, to keep an idea of what's going on. If laws change and things change, we'll amend the plan and try and keep things going. But the idea is to maintain, you have the $15 million a year, and at some point afterwards, at 10 years, then it drops down to $7 million a year. And so you'll have that without and keeping your taxes flat. That's the goal of the plan.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that brings us to the next one. Who would like to read that one? Go ahead, Marie. No one? Anyone?
I'll take that one.
Okay, Mr. Bergstrom. Director Bergstrom. Sorry.
All right. Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271, State of Minnesota as follows. At a meeting held January 23rd, 2017, this board determined to sell and issue general obligation taxable OPEB refunding bonds of Independent School District 271, the issuer of the district or the district. The board, having been advised by Ehlers and Associates Incorporated, its independent municipal advisor, has determined that the issue shall be privately sold after receipt of written proposals as authorized pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 475.60 Subdivision 2. As amended, the board has publicly received and considered all proposals presented in conformity with the terms of offering contained in the official statement, which are hereby ratified and confirmed in all respects and are incorporated herein by reference as though fully specified in this paragraph. The most favorable of such proposals is ascertained to be that of, I don't have a name, to the purchase of the bonds at the price of $11,470,000, plus interest accrued to settlement, and upon the further terms and conditions set forth in the terms of offering contained in the official statement and this resolution. Said proposal is hereby accepted, and the sale of the bonds is hereby awarded to said purchaser. The chair and clerk are authorized and directed to endorse an acceptance on both copies of the most favorable proposal and to send one copy to the purchaser. The treasurer is directed to retain the good faith deposit of the purchaser pending delivery of the bonds and payment therefor, and the good faith deposits of other proposal makers shall forthwith be returned to them.
Second. Okay. Any discussion on that? I think before we continue, we should, actually, I can make the motion to amend the original motion to include the name, the low bidder with J.P. Morgan Securities LLC. Which I think Director Bergstrom didn't have that on there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll second that amendment. It's on the inside cover of my
Friendly amendment.
So any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of amending the original motion to include under the name of the purchaser as J.P. Morgan Securities LLC, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay.
I'll again turn it over to Gary for an update on this bond sale.
Okay, this one we got 11 bids on, so people are very interested in buying Bloomington's bonds today. 11 bids, best one from J.P. Morgan again. Again, we got a little bit of a discount, so you have to increase the size of the bond issue in order to have enough money to fully refund the OPEB bonds. What we're doing here is refunding. Remember, back in 2009, there were a number of districts in the state that issued OPEB bonds, put the money in the trust to pay for OPEB liabilities. And so you have a trust fund set up, and the money from that bond issue went into that OPEB trust. Like all bond issues, one of our roles as your financial advisor is to monitor those bonds and look for opportunities for you to save money by refinancing. Very similar to what you would be doing, watching your own mortgage and looking at the market and saying, "Oh, I can get a lower rate. I ought to go back and refinance my mortgage." It's a lot more complex with bonds and a lot more federal rules and regulations. But bottom line is, we found an opportunity here for you to potentially reduce significantly your taxes over the next few years by refinancing those bonds at this point. Back last month, we had assumed an interest rate of about 2.72. Now we're at about 2.6. Our savings is about $106,000 higher. Over the next several years, you're going to save $1,044,000 in taxes for your property owners in the district, and that'll reduce taxes starting with the taxes in 2018 and going through taxes in 2024. It's about $150,000 a year. If you go back and look back on the attachments on page 7, you'll see that savings per year there of about $150,000. There's also a percentage applied to that. We're saving 7.5% of the refunded debt service. In Minnesota statutes, in order to do this kind of a refunding, you have to save at least 3% in order for it to be legal. You're more than double that percentage, so we consider that a good refunding.
Also to remember on this one, different than the other one, is this is a refunding. We didn't extend the years. We kept it in the same amount of years that the original bond issue was for. So it's not extending it like some would do on a mortgage. They'll extend it, do another 30 years. No, we kept it when it was supposed to be completely paid off. We kept that time frame exactly the same on this bond issue.
Are there any questions or comments? I have a question. So you said we were expecting, well, we received 11 bids on this one, 9 on the previous one, and is that considered high,
Yes,
low,
very
average?
high, very high.
And so is that a statement of our creditworthiness, or?
It's certainly, yes, I would say that. Not that many districts in the state of Minnesota have are in that double A rating category. That's a very high rating. So people were definitely interested in these, found them creditworthy. The thing, when they're buying these bonds, they're looking to turn, most of the cases, they're not looking to hold them themselves. They're looking to sell them out in the market. And obviously, a lot of people thought they would be able to buy these bonds and turn around and sell them to interested investors.
So it's not a scenario where we're in trouble and so there's sharks coming to get us?
No.
But at the same time, yeah, I was reading the outlook, and it does mention we should keep our fund balance above the 5%, though. Is that the?
What they do is, they have these categories of ratings, AAA, AA, single A, and within each one there's a straight and there's a plus and a minus, and they have kind of what they call they have benchmarks that they look at for all kinds of different variables. And the one thing that they're saying in Bloomington compared to a lot of its peers that are AA rated is that your fund balance isn't as high now as it was 3 or 4 years ago, and that you're kind of slipping compared to some of the other districts that are in that AA rating. You're on the little bit lower end of that scale. You're still, obviously above your minimum fund balance policy. You haven't violated that. But compared to other districts that are rated at the AA, your fund balance is a little bit lower than some of the other folks in that category.
Thank you. Something to be mindful of then. Thank you.
The question I have is, and we're also in a fortunate situation where we have the OPEB trust fund established. There's a lot of entities, cities and corporations and other school districts that don't even have that yet. And so they have an obligation from their current operating expenses if they were to have to meet these, right?
Right. They have to make their payments, and if they didn't sell OPEB bonds and create a trust, that's coming out of your general fund dollars. Right. And so there was a group of districts, there was about a 1-year window where this law was in effect, where districts could sell OPEB bonds and create a trust. And your district was of good mind and did that, and helped preserve dollars out of your general fund.
It's approximately about $1 million savings each year in the general fund.
Which, of course, this trust is just for the OPEB responsibilities that we have later on.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions? So all those in favor of approving the motion as amended, please signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I believe that brings us to number 3, American Indian Education Transmittal of Resolution. And that will bring up Mr. Andy Kubis. And if you could introduce the rest of the guests that are coming up with you.
Read the resolution.
Oh, and we have some
Mr.
to
Chair.
read the resolution. Thank you.
Yeah. Resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 accepts the resolution of concurrence by the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee for the 2016-2017 school year.
Second.
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Chair Oliva, school board members, Superintendent Fujitaki, I'm excited to come here tonight and talk about the group that's in front of you as we move for our resolution of concurrence. I'm going to let the committee members introduce themselves, and then we'll move forward.
Hello. My name is Patty Weitenheimer, and I serve on the committee along with these other parents.
I'm Anita Eckert, and I serve on the committee too. I'm the co-chair. I'm Heather Deutschlander. I'm the chair of the committee.
I'm Allie White, and I'm a former student representative and a graduate of Jefferson High School.
We're excited to come tonight. I'll make a few comments and then I'll turn it over. As you know, each year our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee makes a resolution to concur or not concur. Essentially what that's saying is they agree with the direction that the school district is moving and supporting our American Indian students. In the last year and a half that I've been in this position, I've been very, very excited about the work that we've done with our parent committee. I'm excited about tonight. You know, I'll let them say it, but they'll concur again with our direction. There's a lot of good things that are happening, in my opinion. I double-checked with Heather before. I don't want to say that too quickly, but she said, yep, that's okay to say. But we really have made some growth in our students as far as their proficiency and growth, their opportunities. Some of the recommendations that our American Indian families have had in the past, we've been able to put into place. Most recently, one of the ones that we had talked about, you know, albeit seeming rather small, but having more robust opportunities on the east side of town for students, having a chess club at Valley View Elementary School in Indian Mounds. Valley View Elementary School wasn't sure how many students they'd get. They got more than they could handle. They got more than 20 students. And so it's just a great start to making the difference around providing opportunities for our American Indian families. So I'll turn it over to Heather.
All right. The American Indian Parent Advisory Council for the Bloomington Schools voted yes, concurring that Bloomington Public Schools is meeting the needs of its American Indian students on the transmittal of resolution. We agree that the district is working to meet the needs of our students. We acknowledge that progress has been made according to the standardized tests we viewed, and we have hopes for continued growth. We support all efforts to close the opportunity gap in our school system. We recognize and welcome the upcoming expansion of after-school enrichment, such as the offering of chess at Valley View Elementary. Let's continue these efforts. We would like to recommend that the district promote the history and the culture of Minnesota's Indigenous people. We believe that increasing awareness of Indigenous cultures benefits every student's learning. We propose recognizing the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day. The concept of Indigenous Peoples Day has been recognized in the Minneapolis School District since 2014, and most recently, the state of Minnesota in 2016, as they join many other cities, states, and schools across the nation. We hope to create awareness of the community's contributions by dedicating a day to celebrate not only the history of the Indigenous peoples, but also their living descendants and cultures, showcasing that Indigenous people are not just a moment in history, but a part of today's world.
Thank you. Is there any comments, questions?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Director Bergstrom?
Well, thank you all for coming. Patty, Anita, Heather, Allie, it's nice to see you again. I want to make an offer to you. I want to make myself, as I'm sure my coworkers feel the same. We see you this time every year, just about, but we are available to you 24/7. Well, okay, my wife likes the weekend, so you can send us emails if there's a event that you think that you'd like to see us there. Maybe we could educate ourselves coming to that event. If you need help, if you need somebody to serve some food, I'm told I look good with an apron on. What I'm trying to say is I want to be included, and I'd love to know more about what you do in your daily lives, how your students get along, what they face, how they interact, and it's just, we see you just this one time, and then if I run into you in the halls or in public or something, we can stop and say hi, but please don't feel afraid to send us an email and just say, hey, I got this thing going on, do you want to stop by?
Great.
There's 7 of us, I'm sure one of us can make it. So I'll extend that invitation. So I just want you to know that I'm interested in what you're doing.
Thank you. You've showed up to a lot of them. So thank you.
Well, I try to keep my ear to the ground. So
I'd just like to give a shout out to Heidi Hecker and Lisa Benjamin for the work that they do with our families. It's been extraordinary just to see the sense of community, and it's just a way to connect to their just families connecting and feeling a part of the bigger system. So we have family nights periodically. Please come. They're a lot of fun.
They're very
we have
fun.
food. We have fun. We just had one recently, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Creative. We were all involved with some creative endeavors that were really enjoyable. So we'd love to see you. It's on the website. There's a link, Indian Education.
Yeah, there you go.
That's good. Just check it out.
Dr. Stegoff?
I just wanted to thank you guys for your time and your commitment that you put into the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. When I was a parent in this district before I ran for school board, I spent 17 years on the Special Education Advisory Committee, so I understand that everybody's busy, and it does take commitment, and it does take parents to be involved and be willing to spend the time to do it. And thank you for your efforts on behalf of the students. Just wanted to make sure that, I know that it's time consuming for you, so thank you for your effort.
And I would just call attention to the group, too, that up on the second floor of Pond, they have quite an extensive library with a lot of lending books to take out, too, and a lot of different articles. That's really, really fun to spend some time there and then maybe take a book home. Thank you for that.
that's where Heidi and Lisa are now. Yeah.
Dr. Corbel?
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here tonight and for bringing us this kind of good news again. The first year that I was on the board, I remember that the resolution that was brought was of non-concurrence, and that was very, very concerning. So just keep bringing those resolutions, and hearing the good news year after year for the last few years has been really encouraging. Now, as we know, within all our different communities that we have in school districts, it is known that it is mostly the American Indian student community as well as the African American student community are the ones that have the tendency to struggle the most, right, between the communities that we have who struggle in our schools. We recently got the good news that, we're closing the achievement gap, that the graduation rate in Bloomington has gone up in the past year, right? Am I right? Was it 77% to 79 or something like that? And so considering the fact that we still have a lot of work to do, and then there's still a lot of challenges right now, and as we move forward, I would like to hear from you a little bit more about what you would consider to still be some of the biggest challenges within your community, because you know your students better, you know your community better, you know what the needs of your families are. I think, we have heard about the needs of all other different communities in the district, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about what your needs are, and just for the students, and when it comes to graduation as well, how we're doing, and what can we as a school district do to better support you and to better support your students.
I believe when we were reviewing all the data that we all were in agreement that attendance is one of the issues that really played a big part in, I guess, our results and our tests. So that's something we hope that will improve. I don't know what we have for suggestions for that. Yeah.
Mind if I jump in?
Yes, that's what's
Yeah, so we talked about attendance quite openly at one of, I think it was our January meeting, we talked about it. So, in fact, quite honestly, our American Indian students have the poorest attendance rate, attending 95% of the time. So that's something that is definitely on our collective radar. What's happening in a parallel universe is the elementary learning supports group, as well as the elementary principals, are working on an attendance plan, a 3-tiered plan, to be able to get students to school more regularly. Right now, we don't have necessarily a vision or a plan around attendance. We have a reaction to attendance, but we don't have a 3-tiered support that talks about educating families about why it's important, some intervening services to help them get there, and then the third part, which we have now, but what happens if that doesn't work? And so we have a meeting on Wednesday night to work with that elementary attendance group again, but we've been keeping our American Indian families updated on that progress.
Mr. Chair, just one last, I want to follow up on Nellie's question. It's tough when you have a microphone in front of your face and you didn't expect questions. You're always welcome to send thoughts. So on your way home, you're going to say, I wish I would have said this, or I would have said that, or tomorrow morning when you're having breakfast. Just take a moment, take a deep breath, write it down, and send it to us. We'll look at it when it comes. Thank you.
One more thing, that's okay. What about parent engagement?
We have a really active parent committee, and we also have with our family nights, that seems to be our largest attended event, so families are really involved with the events that we do offer them. Is there other things you wanted to add with that?
I don't have any data on it, but it just seems like we've gotten way more participation on our family nights.
Yes.
Lisa might. There you go.
At our last event, we had Travis Zimmerman come from the Blacks Indian Museum, and we did a Ojibwe shoulder bag activity. And at that event, we had 61 students and parents, which equaled about 21 families. Out of, we have about 135 families in the district. So I did math, I think it's about 15% of our families showed up to our last event. So, and we also had about the same numbers for our December event too.
Yeah, I asked because I remember there were some concerns also back about 4 years ago about that. It was a big issue. Thank you.
I would be remiss, I know Patty mentioned it, but it was on my notes as well to give a compliment to Heidi and Lisa for the work that they do. They not only work with students, they work with the community. They also work with the families and educating parents as well. So it's a big job. Upwards of 150 families and the work that gets done there. They do great work.
It's my turn. I do have a statement to read. Before I do that, I'd like to throw out my 2 cents. In the recommendation, and I'm going back and forth between documents, so I don't have it in front of me, but one of the things is having more cultural awareness of American Indian culture, and not saying it's something that happened 200 years ago. We're still relevant. And we do have a policy that's coming up later on, 606. And in that policy, it says, if I can find it. Okay, I lost my spot. Hold on. District Diversity Advisory Council. So the Office of, or the Learning and Teaching Department works with the District Diversity Advisory Council to develop an inclusive educational program. And this program includes a curriculum that is developed and delivered so that students and staff gain an understanding and appreciation of, and it goes into different things, cultural diversity being one of those. And so when I first saw this, I thought, if there's areas that we could improve in the curriculum, and things that just came off the top of my head were dance, music, food, history, literature, things like that you feel aren't being represented or should be represented more or differently, or currently you would have a different take on that, please reach out to those groups if you aren't already and make sure that the district is doing what it needs to do in order to represent the American Indian community appropriately.
I believe, I think it was a couple years ago, we were able to give some feedback on the curriculum, and I felt that was
Standards,
yeah,
yeah.
the standards, and that was great that we were asked about that, and people took that in consideration. I know there's a cultural trunk that is shared throughout the district, and that's been helpful as well. But I mean, those are little steps in that way, and I know there's a lot more things that we can do. I still believe a lot of people look at us as at the historically of what we're known of and not current. So that's why I believe this is really important, having that day and knowing that we're still a people that are here. It's important to be recognized and to educate people on that.
Director Levi, I'd also mention, if you're looking for, I know it was asked of the committee for room for improvement. If I were to be able to weigh in on that, that's something that we need to reconstitute as well. So it says in statute that American Indian families should be looking at the curriculum to give, their comments. In the change of instruction department in the last couple of years, we want to make sure. I just talked to Assistant Superintendent Melby last week about that. Heidi Hecker gave me the heads up that she thought that maybe that wasn't up to where it used to be, and so we're making things so that happens again.
Yeah, I have something to add.
Sure.
When I was in 9th grade, this girl found out I was Native, and she asked me, she's like, "Oh, do your family still live in teepees?" Like, I think that really stood out to me, that people aren't aware of like where Natives are today and the issues that we face today, and just how things have changed. And then in contrast to that, in 5th grade, I think it was at my elementary school. My grandpa, who used to be the chief of Red Lake, he came and did Education Day, and that was when the students around me, they came up to me after that, and they're like, "Wow, your grandpa's really cool," and like, I learned a lot today. So I think it's good to have these days of awareness for all cultures, and then everyone can understand a little bit, and it helps with that discrimination.
Thank you. So I will read this statement. On behalf of the school board, I wish to commend the American Indian Parent Committee for its continued support and collaboration with the district to meet the unique educational and cultural needs of American Indian heritage. We wish to also commend Heidi Hecker, Indian Education Coordinator, and Lisa Turgeon, Indian Education Support for their leadership and program development. We appreciate the American Indian Parent Committee's request to increase awareness of Indigenous cultures with the proposal to declare the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day. We will commit to you this evening that we will study the request and come back at a later date with a response and recommendation. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Need a vote? Yeah, we read it though. We need to vote on the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, thank you. And we will move to number 4, NTL Flexible Learning Space Update, Jefferson and Kennedy High Schools. I believe we'll have John Weiser in the update. And our 2 high school principals. Thank you for being here.
I'll use this one, okay?
Good evening, Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members. I'm here with Mr. Beaton and Mr. Anderson tonight to talk about the flexible space update at our 2 high schools. I'll set the table and then I'll turn it over to them and they can talk about their team's planning. Just as a little background, I wanted to remind the viewing audience and the audience in attendance that flexible space work is part of the Anytime Anywhere component of NTL, Next Technologies for Learning. NTL came out of the 2013 Safe and Innovative Schools referendum. We're in our 3rd year of implementation, or about 2.5 years into our implementation. My own summary of what's happening here is that as instruction changes and evolves, our staff are doing the hard work of differentiating instruction for our students, given a new technology-rich environment. Those changes in instruction compel changes in space, changes in furniture, changes in design around anytime, anywhere learning, flexing the time and place and path of instruction. So that's a little bit of what you're seeing here in our 3-time-a-year stop that we take on this journey. Back in November, we updated you on one component of flexible instruction. I was here with the digital learning coordinators, Holly Skadsum and Karen Qualley. Here's a couple of the slides from that presentation. We talked about the Flex cohort. We have 140 teachers participating in that Flex cohort, trying to flex their own sort of their instruction in their classrooms. We talked a little bit about Washburn, because Washburn was coming off of their big construction year through the alt facilities process, and you remember we brought Google goggles, and you could look inside and take a 3D tour of a couple of spaces. We also talked at that time about the timeline for past work and upcoming work in Jefferson Kennedy. Were on that timeline. I am happy to report that some new news. The Education Foundation of Bloomington put out a grant program in the last couple months called the American Family Dreams Foundation Innovation Grants. Of the 40 or so teacher applicants that they got, 3 of them were around flex instruction, and another 14 were around flexible spaces. Teachers applying for modifying a corner of their classroom, a part of their room, a space outside of their classroom, to help evolve their teaching. We partnered with EFB, and we're in the process now of putting that in furniture and that technology into place. So I think that's a real success. I think it shows that this is both a part of the vision of the district through the referendum and through NTL, but it's also coming from the bottom up as teachers start to experiment and explore. They're finding new needs. Board members can look forward to some of these stopping points. The funding for the Jefferson and the Kennedy project are built into the bid process, so you might see some evidence of that when you go through that bid process for construction. I don't want to leave out Poplar Bridge, which is also going under the knife this summer. They'll have some significant flex instruction work done there as well. We're not talking about that tonight, but that would be a good topic for this fall. Also, you will see components of these projects built into the budgeting process that rolls out this winter and spring. So, we give you a lot of information. I tried to, in this slide, incorporate it into a 30,000-foot view, so if you'll bear with me. If we look at our past completed work, that would be the dark blue items we've talked about, and we look at some of the items that I've talked about that are in progress, and then we talk about what's planned moving forward. This kind of is a representation of the footprint in all of our buildings, including our community ed facilities, for where flexible instruction and flexible space work is happening. It's really an organic process, a lot of teacher-led as well as leader-led support. We accelerated some of the media center work, so there are some of those media centers that are a little ways out in terms of the alt facility schedule. So we're accelerating some of that work. Some of those elementaries especially are in that the 17-18 work. You'll see them with the M's for media center. And then because of the success and the partnership with EFB, you can look for about 30 more of these squares on this diagram, this 30,000-foot view next year. You can see this is a real thing that's happening. It's a real movement that's happening in our district. All right, so I'll pass the mic down to Mr. Beaton to talk about some of the Kennedy plans specifically. These updates came from a December superintendent's update where we as a team tried to outline some of the objectives of the larger project. Again, we're looking at the focus on flexible learning options for students. It falls under the umbrella of pathways, students developing new pathways, exploring ways to grow, develop 21st century skills as they graduate and leave us. It includes definitely our college and career centers, and these guys will talk about that.
Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board, thanks for the invitation tonight. We appreciate being here. Andy Beaton, principal at Kennedy High School. It's great that we've had this opportunity to really think about design and innovation. One of the things we talk about often in instruction is about sense of purpose. You have to know why you're teaching what you're teaching, so make that connection with students. And part of that has to do with the space. How do you set up your classroom? If you're going to have a discussion, should students be sitting in rows? If you're going to be having a lecture, should students be sitting right next to each other? A test. So the purpose, and I think some of our best practitioners really have that purpose in mind. Flexible learning and flexible furniture and spaces is part of that, that discussion. Now this really comes with the idea of doing best practices to accelerate the progress of our students, and technology is part of that. Since we've gone to one-to-one, more and more of our teachers are finding new practices in instruction, in assessment, in grading, in intervention, using technology to do that. So this gives us more of an opportunity to create those spaces for our teachers to expand their work. So one of the spaces that we're looking at designing is really related to furniture in the media center. So and the design we're looking at is related to full classroom spaces, but also spaces for individual students and collaborative spaces. So all related to, depending on that purpose, for self-directed learning, greater engagement, digital literacy, which what John was talking about, 21st century skills, creativity, and problem solving. Now in that media center, if I could get this, is we've built a new college and career center. We've already built it, don't have the furniture in there. We have still some existing furniture, but we built the space, and it came from a very tiny space that we had in our counseling office to really have a vibrant, active, large space where we do college visits, where we have informational meetings for students about scholarships, finishing college applications. We're currently running after-school ACT practice classes after school through the College and Career Center. So it is really blown up at Kennedy High School. So many, many more students involved and taking care of those things and filling out their pieces with PGP and getting organized and planned for their future. So the first space is that media center and plus the College and Career Center within that space. For staff, when we're talking about a new space, one of the pieces we're looking at is kind of looking at some dormant spaces that we have right now. Now, as we've gone one-to-one, computer labs have become a little bit more obsolete, and they're not being utilized the same way. So we're looking at some replacement of computer labs to actually create these flex spaces for collaborative spaces, to have students get help or give help. So in terms of that purpose, again, looking at one of the spaces which was an existing computer lab that we can repurpose. So I will pass it on to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Jason Anderson. I'm principal at Jefferson High School. Very excited to be here and thankful for the opportunity to discuss what we're doing. Part of the best part of this experience has been working with John and with Andy and a bunch of the team members, because we've been very collaborative in that process, and we've had a lot of good ideas come to the surface just by working as a team. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity. Jefferson Commons is sort of the grander scheme, but I'll get a little bit more detailed here about it's a student-focused, student-friendly 21st century learning environment that really is geared towards self-directed and student-directed and ownership of learning. And we're very excited for these changes and think that with the research that we've done, the groundwork that we've done, we're really going to take some major steps towards meeting the needs of 21st century students. So Commons, the space that we're going to be mostly working on is outside of our media center. If you've been in Jefferson High School, outside of what we call Flag Hallway, which is our main thoroughfare, and then one of our major hallways down one of our main arteries to some of the classrooms. Similar to what Mr. Beaton's saying about unused spaces, there was a lot of unused space. It's sort of not purposeful, so we're going to make it purposeful. And we're very excited about that. With some simple work, some moving of lockers to different locations, we're going to be able to create room for flexible learning for well over 200 students to be able to access this space. And the nice thing about it being out in the open is that it will obviously be accessible to community as well for the variety of evening things that we do and that nature. But we really are looking for spaces that meet a variety of needs. When we did our research, we found that we needed to have space for quiet learning, medium, small talk, and then large group conversations. As we did our research, we found that many exemplary businesses in this country have very similar spaces built into their workspace. So we are really mirroring what the modern day workforce is already utilizing, what they already know, that you have to create spaces to collaborate, you have to create spaces to bounce ideas off each other, and you have to create spaces for the choice of the individual doing it. The one-size-fits-all model is something that we're slowly moving away from. Students, it's obviously built for student use and student-friendly and student-directed learning. Gives students choice of when and where they learn, variety of resources, a lot of opportunities. And really, we have students like Allie here, and I was looking up her schedule. She's an online student. She takes several AP classes. She's involved in student government. Students like that need to be able to access learning beyond the 45 minutes in any particular classroom. They have a big picture view of what they need to do and where they need to go. And spaces like this and the philosophy that comes with it really is supporting that sort of student learning and that sort of student self-directed, self-guided exploration of where they want to go. Our College and Career Center is right in the heart of this. It's going to be very accessible. That's where the heart of our PGP is also located in that location. So all of that is going to be focused both systematically and philosophically on student choice, student learning about what they need to be and where they need to go, and then the staff, of course, to facilitate that growth. So with the College and Career Center and the PGP heart work that comes through that College and Career Center, we're very excited for that. And staff really, as John mentioned, are taking this head on. We have several dozen members of our teaching staff and support staff who are part of our planning work. They've all had input. They've all seen the progress, and we've done this collectively as a group, which I'm very excited about that ownership amongst our entire staff. It allows them to really tap into some of those best practices that we've been talking about, what that research has been talking about, to allow students to collaborate, to have those learning opportunities that Mr. Beaton was talking about as well. This really, right on the doorstep of most of our classrooms, is going to be used very heavily. Oh, there you go.
Questions?
Mr. Chair. Oh, thank you for coming, gentlemen. So I think this one, Andy, this is at Kennedy. So I have an observation and a question. So I'm looking at the timeline slide. I apologize, I don't know the number of it, but it says timeline at the top, coming soon. There's a picture of students sitting in front of a screen that's on wheels, and I was at a meeting at Kennedy. It's in the room, whatever the room is off the media center there, and the guy who put this one together happened to be there, and he was exceptionally proud of that work. I think I remember him calling it a portable presentation platform or something along those lines, but we used it in our meeting, and I thought it was really helpful. There's a modem in the back. It had a keyboard down. There's a tray on there that carries everything that went with it, but you don't have to stare at that screen or that television. It can move to accommodate the crowd that's in the room. And I just anecdotally from a hands-on experience, I thought that was very interesting. And I trapped him after the meeting and asked him a bunch of questions. How did you put it together? Do you have the right parts? Are we going to do a lot more of this? So I guess the observation has a question on the tail end of it. Do you have more of those platforms? Is that what the district is going towards, how do you like them?
I think good question. I think one of the things that we've encouraged at both of our high schools and with John's work is innovation. So even before we were talking about the potential of having these new spaces, we were talking about how do we do this kind of collaborative work? How do you do blended learning? We're already doing a lot of hybrid work. Where are those students going to go when they're doing online learning and so on? These presentation platforms were part of how we do that. So it was really some innovation that came from our tech team with feedback from instruction to have these are portable, and that's the idea. kids want to get together and they're going to pull 4 chairs together, they now have a presentation station to work collaboratively on an assignment or a presentation together. And now it doesn't have to be stuck and mounted in this one particular spot. It just gets wheeled over to the next spot where a different group of students work on it. So we have a number of these in our media center. They can also be borrowed in classrooms. Teachers use them in classrooms and they wheel them down. So it gives us more flexibility. And actually we're shifting from that hardwired mounted smart board in a lot of classrooms to more of these monitors that can be used through their Chromebook and through computers that could be really anywhere.
Cool. It was just really interesting to see how it worked.
Yeah, so it's called a student collaboration station with student in the name intentionally, and it was Kevin Nelson, I think, is who you're probably referring to at Kennedy. Kevin helped drive this because he had to convince us that it was worth putting this kind of this thing together, but it really has been great. Just so you know, the experience is you can pull that keyboard that Andy's talking about and log into it. It has what's called a Chrome bit in the back of it, and it's really like a big Chromebook, like a big laptop. You turn it on, you get to a login screen, and if you remember your Gmail password, you can use it to basically log into that 55-inch monitor and then collaborate like these students are doing.
What was his name again, just so he's...
Kevin Nelson.
Okay. So he can look in on wherever this is playing and hear his name. So the follow-up question, if I can ask that, is staff buy-in. How is the staff responding? And Jason, you're welcome to jump in on that. I know these things kind of get rolled out, and probably just about the time staff is used to the smart boards.
Sure.
Here comes, and we roll out student collaboration station, however you referred to it. How's the staff feeling and responding to it?
Yeah, so I'll talk at the high level, and then these guys can talk about what's happening at their sites. We talk about an adoption curve in terms of new technology, the rate at which technology is adopted. We generally have experiences in all of our lives where we have some people who are ready to work on that bleeding edge of technology, and then we have a lot of medium adopters who will do it once some people have figured out the nuts and bolts, and then we have some people who are just going to who are happy with what they have, and as long as it works, don't take it away from me. So we're in that process with smart boards, as we've said. This started out as an early adopter phase. It's now in that middle chunk where it's sort of a solution for everyone. So as we replace all of our technologies on some sort of replacement plan, as we replace projectors this year, we'll probably see about a 50-50 mix of projectors leaving and being replaced with panels, these flat panels, and still projectors being replaced with projectors and wanting to get one more cycle out of them. We're about 2 years into the smartboard transition as well. That transition will probably go another couple years, and we're probably still in that early adopters have moved. We're starting to enter that middle chunk of adoption there as well.
Well, I can address something. Teachers always want to find ways to make their work more efficient and organized, and they always are happy to do things that help students learn better, faster, be more successful, more engaged. So John is right that you have your early adopters that jump in, but word spreads quickly about the opportunities that are available through technology. And we always talk about it doesn't replace just great instruction, but it can accelerate great instruction that's happening in the classroom by helping with grading, helping with feedback, helping students get that anytime, anywhere kind of learning. So it really travels fast amongst the staff because they ultimately want students to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo most of that. It's whenever there's change, there's challenges with that. But we've had a great group of teachers that are widespread throughout all curriculum levels, throughout all grade levels, and not just teacher support staff as well. So that's helped with that process, and we're committed to, as we implement how learning and instruction changes, to running that through a teacher-driven model as well. So it'll be a process, but I think for the most part we are very optimistic and eager to get moving on it.
Anybody else?
Oh, I wish I could go back to high school again.
Oh, sure.
Like Mr. Anderson said, I'm in an online class now, and I know as it's becoming more available, so many people take like online or the ones at PSEO, and they don't really have anywhere to go a lot of times, so I think these spaces will be good. They can like work together or on their own, so I think it'll be a good place for them to go in a good environment.
Should have started it last year, huh?
Yeah, I wish. They look nice.
And to follow up with Representative Anderson's comments, I was wondering, when we were looking through this, it said, opens up opportunities for learning outside the classroom and independent work, some small group collaboration. So is this something that students could do during the day? So say they had a math class, would 3 or 4 of them be able to go to this space during the regular class and collaborate and while the rest of the class was going on? I mean, is that something that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, teachers have the option. They currently do, but with less options. But they'll definitely have the toolbox opened up a bit to have that flexible learning platform where they can do small group instruction with various groups of students that need a little bit more focus. They'll be able to rotate students. I mean, it's just really going to be opening up a lot of possibilities. But yes, to answer your question, they will have that option during the class period to have flexible learning opportunities with safe, secure, in our building with our staff instead of some of the other options outside the building. So, yeah, very excited about that.
Well, I'll just follow up because at the last high school meeting with our student advisory that I attended, one of the questions that they had asked is some of the classes, say you have an average class size of 30, and that means one class could have 20 and one class could have 40, and now your average size is 30. And one of the proposed solutions that while they were brainstorming was, well, if you had a class that was overcrowded, had 34, 35, 38 kids, would a possible solution be for some of them to be able to use a flexible learning space? And I said, I don't know, but that's a great question and something that you could follow up on. And I don't know if you continued that discussion at your last meeting or not, or if you could add to that, or if you've been following up already.
That's one of our main proposals right now is if a class has 40 students and maybe 10 of them already know the curriculum really well or what they're learning that day, would they be allowed to go out and do lessons online so then the teacher could have more one-on-one time with the rest of the class? So it would kind of lower that class size to say 30.
So I can address that. One of the things that happens in hybrid with our teachers, and hybrid is a combination of face-to-face and blended learning that a lot of our teachers do. I think our best teachers that do hybrid use it as an opportunity to split the class and so on. They might say, those students are going to be with me face-to-face if they're dropping, a C or below. And those students that maybe are getting A's and B's and are working more independently, then they can do that hybrid work kind of on their own. So that would just be one example of the opportunity for independence depending on how students are performing. And a student that slips, that's not doing very well online, may come back and do face-to-face. But it gives that teacher and that team of teachers the option to be creative, to do station teaching. I have 2/3 of my class doing this on hybrid, 1/3 with me. We rotate that by the day, by the week, things like that. There's some real opportunities.
Okay, well, thank you.
Now, realistically speaking, with all those kids out there in all those free spaces, are we going to need more staff, hall monitors and so forth? I know coming to the middle school, for instance, and some of the kids are outside in little groups too, while the teacher's in the class, they really need to have some supervision, discipline, or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, I imagine the structures are, because we have different designs. The nice thing about our particular design, the way our building's laid out, it's sort of blocked off into this big kind of, we call it a commons, but kind of a town square. So we can, we can position pretty much who we have now. I mean, but there will be a learning curve of new things and new hotspots and where should we put a camera, in certain places. I mean, our kids behave pretty well most of the time anyway. They just, they do what's right. But of course, students are students and things happen. But we think we're in a layout with not a lot of blind spots. We think we're going to be pretty set with that. But there will probably be some reevaluation of that as it progresses.
And it's a graduated system, right? It's not something that is something that teachers and students who are ready to participate in participate in. So you heard Andy talk about the types of students who stay back in class with me are those who haven't hit one of those checks, and the ones that are more independent earn that independence, earn a little more independent experience. What's happening, I think it's really exciting, the instructional side of it, because what Allie is talking about is happening right now through a transaction between the strong media tech teams that these guys have at their sites and teachers. Hey, can you take 3 of my students? Hey, can you take 8 of my students? And what really is happening then is I, as a teacher, get to work with the students who most need my expertise, and I'm not holding another group of 8 students who are working independently or who need to do what you see in that picture to work collaboratively. We're not trying to block them out or slow them down. They can go off and work while teachers' expertise is kept with the right students. So that's, I think, what's most exciting about this.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the update.
Thank you.
And we will keep moving along. Number 5, right sizing the budget, 2017-18 finalized list of budget adjustments. We will invite Mr. Zivkovic back to this table.
Be resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the right sizing the budget list of budget adjustments of $1 million as listed below, and directs administration to develop the 2017-18 budget using these adjustments to meet right sizing the budget target. 1, staffing reduction, $752,000. 2, budget shifts, $250,000.
Second.
Okay.
Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members. This is a proposal that the administration put together based on the target amount that the board approved back in early January. As you can see on the back part of this resolution, it gives you more detail on where those reductions are. And we recommend we move forward with this. If the board approves this tonight, we will start processing staffing for the sites as early as tomorrow.
Yeah, I just want to, if you could take a minute to kind of clarify a couple things. We just had the presentation of all these new great things that we're doing with the flexible learning spaces, and then we go right into the budget cuts. So from people watching, they're like, well, you have money for this, but not for that. So I wonder if you could just kind of explain that real quickly.
Sure. These budget reductions here are based on dollars that are general fund dollars. The dollars that we're talking about in the earlier presentation are more of capital dollars, of facility dollars, more dollars that can only be spent for purposes of buildings or doing equipment or those type of items.
Okay, thank you. 'Cause that's a question I get quite frequently. Well, you're making cuts, but we have all these new TVs, and it's like, well, it's not the same pot of money. And no, this is
and
our
we're required to, based on what we asked the voters,
Exactly.
and also what we submitted to the state of what we can use those dollars for in that operating or the capital projects levy.
Okay, thank you. And getting on to this, obviously we don't want to have to do any cuts, and this is the 3rd year in a row that we've had to make cuts. I guess the silver lining is that this is a lot smaller than we thought 6 months ago, when we were thinking it was going to be more like $2.5 to $3.5 million worth of cuts, and we were kind of saved by an increase in enrollment of, what was it, 100 and something students?
Correct.
So it's, it's not so fun to be cutting, but $1 million is a lot better than cutting $3 million. So just wanted to put that out there.
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
I just want to say thanks to all those involved in this conversation. There's a lot of hard work, energy, and effort that goes into this, and I'll echo Director Bennett's sentiments that these are not easy to make, but they're going to have to be made, and I just want to say thanks to all those that contributed to this conversation.
Anybody else? Yeah, to echo that sentiment, I know sometimes, as Vice Chair Bennett had mentioned, people think, well, we get this, and this is the first time we're seeing this information, but we've actually been working on this budget since last year, when we did the same thing with the previous budget. So this is a work in progress, and I'm glad that we got the number down lower than we had initially projected. And so now it's time to vote. All those in favor of this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that will bring us to our section on policy review, and we have a number of them.
Make a statement.
Sure.
Okay, I apologize to the board, the Somali Parent Network, and the Latino Parent Association, and I'm sorry. I apologize to the board, the Somali Parent Network, and the Latino Parent Association, and the Latino community, and the Somali community. I recommended bringing forward policies and for board actions tonight on the belief that we had processed those policies, we translated policies, we incorporated suggestions from the groups into those policies. However, based on the comments made tonight, I was mistaken, and I apologize for that. My recommendation is that we pull policy 545, student rights, revised policy 413, harassment and violence, and revised policy 609, religion in schools. And we table that and a pledge to work with the two groups to process these policies, and hopefully we can bring it back for board discussion and action on March 13th. I'm not sure if I can organize meetings before then, but I'm going to try. My understanding was that there was a sense of urgency on many of these policies, and that's the reason why we brought it forward tonight. Maybe in the process of moving it forward, the groups did not feel they had enough time to process and understand the policies.
I'll second that.
Well,
No,
motion has
somebody
been made.
needs to make a motion. Yes.
I'm sorry.
So Maureen will move, Mr. Bergstrom will second.
I'm ready to second.
Discussion.
So the fact that the policy committee had met and reviewed those policies, discussed those policies, thought they were adequate. We still need to take policies back out into the community and have their input into the policies before we bring them back to look at them, review them, and then possibly make changes or whatever. This seems to me to be a somewhat ongoing type of a thing, and I don't know if a town hall or something else like that would be any better served just to present information and then hear all of that, as opposed to going out, taking the policies out, and then bringing them back. So just thinking about some of the involvement, because there, as we've heard, there's always going to be somebody who said, I didn't hear about it, I didn't know about it, and I want to have my say in it. And that just doesn't happen with a huge community like we have. So I'm just questioning whether or not removing these, tabling these, and having more discussion with constituents and or community members at large, I suspect, because there's an awful lot of aspects to harassment, student rights, and religion in the schools, that it might get to be significant discussion.
Chair Leva, I appreciate Director Sorum's comments. My suggestion is that what I heard tonight is that those two groups would like to provide additional comments. They have already provided comments. They can provide additional comments to these policies. I'd like to hear those comments from those two groups and then bring it back to the board policy committee for another discussion. Again, I think the groups are looking for action sooner than later. They feel time is of the essence, so I'd like to be responsive to that.
I agree with postponing these resolutions because, or these policies, because, I mean, clearly there was a misunderstanding where they thought they would have an opportunity to give additional feedback of the policy proposals, and that wasn't given. So it would be kind of disingenuous for us to say that we're going to give them opportunity to have feedback and then not give them that opportunity and then pass the policy. Right. So that's kind of a wrong message we want to send. I mean, I agree that, you know, we've been spending a lot of time on these policies and getting them right, and I'd like to get them out because especially the student rights policy, I think, is something that would be a benefit to our school district and to our community, but I think that we need to make sure that we do it right. I'd rather take the extra time and postpone another 2 weeks and get it right than have to put it out and feel that the people that we originally talked about this with feel that they're not being listened to. Kind of defeats the whole purpose, my opinion. So, you know, unfortunately, it postpones it another 2 weeks, maybe longer, but, you know, I think we need to get it right. Director Stagno?
Yes, I agree with everything Director Bennett said, but I also just want to add that I did sense when I attended one of the parent groups that there is an urgency to this. So if it's all right, I would like to ask the people that are still here if that is okay. I would like to know if it is okay if we wait until whatever the date was, the March whatever meeting. I just want to make sure that, I mean, I agree that I think we should do it, but I also want to make sure that the time sensitive, I mean, is, I don't know, can I ask someone or?
Sure, yeah, we have. Come on up. Or you can say from there, we can maybe hear you, but.
Sure.
Well, she should
come to the.
TV's going to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, so TV can hear you.
Yeah, come to the microphone, please. Any of them, you can take your pick. I think they're all on.
Okay. My name is Rosita Balch. I work with Hennepin County, and I help to facilitate the relationship between the associations and the district. My understanding is that both of the associations would like to receive what you already proposed, study it individually in every group with their own time and look everything and give comments to Mr. Fujitake. So I think, yes, there is an urgency, but a policy is something that could last for 20 years. So ideally, they want to get it done perfectly and a policy that lasts and is helpful for all the communities. So I think the next meeting is on March 9th. So if you send that information to the committees, they will study and give you the comments. Is that okay?
Say something before you leave. So with regards to some of these policies, on the bullying and the harassment, a lot of that language is there by statute, and we can't manipulate. So I just want to make sure that you know, the organizations know that we'd like to hear their feedback, but if we don't, you know, change the policies to what they're asking for, there's some reasons behind that. That doesn't mean we're not listening or that we don't care, but it's just there's a lot of policies, there's wording is particular on how we word them.
The reason we are there to assist them.
Okay.
And this is a learning process for all of you and for them. They like to be part of the decision making, and that will make your district look very good in the eyes of the world. So allow them to take the time to understand and learn. Okay. They will participate in numerous ways if they are able to really contribute.
Well, yeah, I think it's great, and I'm glad
and they may be totally happy and say, oh, this is great. We're not trying to cause any conflict. We just want to have understanding, and so you look eye to eye and you understand that you have the best interest of all the students.
Well, I'm glad that we're getting the feedback and we're getting this engagement.
Seriously.
So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you.
Seriously, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Corbin?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to say that I truly appreciate the work that was put into the policies, the work that the superintendent did, and the committee, the policy review committee. Good effort, good try. But I also want to highlight the fact that we've been working really hard for the past years on improving our community and parent engagement approach. And so here we are looking at two different parent groups, like I had previously expressed to you outside of cameras. Really having the intention of coming and working together with the district, getting to know more about how the system works here in the States, and getting to know more about our district, and really engaged, really being part of this. And we have encouraged that for so long that I think it is really important that we keep listening and that we keep working with them, honoring their requests as well. And part of that is the policy and the way that we approach those policies that, of course, touch all of our communities, but in this right moment, some communities probably feel more in need of touching those particular policies for obvious reasons. So I think it's very important that we honor that we provide that kind of space, like Rosita said, and bring those policies to them, discuss them with them, have that moment and take that time and see what happens, see what kind of input they can provide. And like she said, they might think it's great, they might think it's good, but at least they are part of that decision making. When we call for parent engagement, it has to be beyond the come to 1,000 events, and it's more come and be part of this decision making process. The other thing that I heard tonight was that, there is an urgency on that policy, some sort of policy, something that that helps them feel reassured and safe and feel like that their students are safe in our district and supported. And one of those things I think is what I heard tonight and what I've been hearing for many weeks now is please release a statement. And I just want you to once again be aware of that, because that was clear as well today. There are conversations around that particular statement. So I just want you to please think about that and reconsider, do we need to have another conversation about that? Or do we have that conversation after the policy passes? Or do we need a conversation before that? Because there's the urgency, that feeling that there is something that needs to be addressed. And right now, our students and our communities need to hear that kind of support coming from our board, so that not only some communities are always heard, but all communities are heard. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just quickly, I agree. I'm fine with postponing these until we can get more input. I did hear what Director Sorum said, and it does concern me somewhat about any protocol that we might be setting for policy work down the road. I understand this is a little bit unusual to open the content of the policy up to the broader community. It doesn't mean that we're not interested in community input. It doesn't mean that we're not interested in hearing what people have to say. I just want you to understand that when we do work on these policies, we currently have 95, 96 policies, and it's possible that we could have 95 or 96 individual groups that would want to give input on each one of those policies, and that would be an interesting conversation around each one of those policies. So I understand what you were saying, Jim. At least I think that's where you were going with it. That said, I'm okay with postponing these until we get more input from the groups that are asking for it. Just want to set that out there.
Yeah, I'm just to what Dick was saying. And under normal circumstance, I would agree completely with that. But I think this is a little different in that we started the conversation by asking for their input, and then they feel that they weren't able to give that input. So, yeah, typically we wouldn't, when we revise a policy, we wouldn't just say, okay, who wants to come comment on these policies? Because, yeah, it would be interesting conversations, 95 different conversations. So I think this is just a little unique that we're doing this. I don't think it sets a precedent for future policies, because this is when we initiated the conversation.
Well, and not only that, but it's the fact that it's posted on the website as well, right? So anybody can misinterpret that and think that, in fact, they had.
Given their opinion, yeah.
Yeah, that how you read it there, it's like they had participated of that. So I think that part of the concern tonight from them was, you have put that in the website, but we don't feel like we were part of it. So we actually want to be part of that, if that's what you're saying that we're doing. Just got to be careful what we post.
So I'll just throw my comments to what Director Sorum had mentioned. One of the issues that came up with this, trying to bring it forward tonight, is that things typically go very slowly when we try to make changes. And so what ends up happening is, if we don't hear back from these groups until Wednesday next week, we have to post 3 days notice in order for the policy committee to even meet to discuss it, which would then bring us into the next Monday. And then we discuss it, and if we have comments, we'd have to send it back to these groups. And if they're meeting on Wednesday, we have to post another 3 days before we can meet to discuss the policy again. And you get into this back and forth. And so, since we've been talking about this for a month and a half, 2 months, what I would maybe offer to the conversation is that if we start seeing that it's going to be a lot of this back and forth, that we just hold one meeting maybe with everybody, may possibly open it up to a town hall type of forum where we can just say, okay, let's have everyone sit down together and talk. I don't think that's necessary. I think you've had great conversations with them. The feedback that I've gotten so far and the notes that I've gotten from everybody says that it's going well the way that we're doing. But if we start to see this derailing, then perhaps that is an avenue that we can take. So there is a motion. Would you like to?
Sure. The concept that we did generate a statement already about student rights that we were going to present tonight, but that the members of the public hadn't seen it to know about it. Now, if we pull this off and take this same general statement and its reference to the various policies, 413, 515, and 609, and take that document back to the groups and let them see it, are they going to want to see the whole policy, 10 pages, 12 pages, 15 pages of the other policies in their meeting to discuss it? Or would they just take this document, discuss it, accept it, and go from there?
They were very specific about this couple, especially. That was 514 and 413. 413, they said.
I think you mean 545.
545 and 413.
545?
545, 413, and 609 is.
Well, it's in the paper that we got from the parent, from
There's
the
a
Somali.
514 on the list, so
From the
it's
Somali
545. I
parent
think it's a
network.
typo.
545 is the proposal we're going to
Yeah.
present tonight.
Right.
There's
And
a
that
514
included
on the list.
515,
Well, this one
413.
says 413, so that's one. 413 for sure, I think it's the one.
Sure, yeah, that's
Yep.
harassment and violence.
That's harassment and violence.
Yeah.
And 545 is student rights.
545
Right,
is student rights.
545.
And 609 is
Religion
religion.
and
Religion.
schools.
Did it
Yeah.
come up? I don't even remember that coming up in the discussion.
No.
I mean, it's certainly a touchy area, sensitive area that would come up. I guess what I'm asking is, would this proposed policy 545 be the document to start the discussion?
I would say I'd leave that to the superintendent when he schedules a meeting, discusses with the groups what exactly they want to see. If they want to see everything, or if they want to just see this one.
Yeah, I think so.
All of this information is public information anyway.
Right.
So.
Well,
It is, they have it.
the 545 proposed.
Well, yeah, the
I
proposal
think
might be on the website.
Yeah,
in the letter, I
545
see
wasn't there yet.
on our website, it says the school board and district administration are highlighting 2 policies concerning a safe learning environment for students, policy 413 and policy 514.
514, yeah.
So that's what we say on our on our website, and it says 413 is currently under review and has some more information.
So which policies are we pulling off this?
For tonight, the motion is 545, 413, and 609. Am I correct?
Yeah.
I believe that's what the motion is.
514 is not on the list tonight.
Correct.
The one that's on the website is not on the list tonight, so we don't have to pull it tonight because it's not on the list.
It's not in there.
Yeah, we're not revising 514 tonight.
So we're pulling off for tonight 545 and then
413. 413 and 609.
Okay.
So delete those from tonight, yeah.
Not delete them, but postpone them.
Postpone.
So did we?
I think this is the longest discussion we've ever had about not voting on something.
Did we get a motion?
We have a motion and a second. Is everybody okay? Well, I shouldn't say is everybody okay.
Is there any more discussion?
Is there any more discussion on whether or not we should keep these? No, hearing none. All those in favor of pulling policy 545, 413, and 609 from tonight's agenda to be postponed to the March, whatever the first meeting is in March, I don't remember if it's the 9th or the 13th, to the first meeting in March, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So, let's move down the line. New policy 457, respectful workplace. Do we have
Mr. Chairman?
rules here?
Go ahead. All right. Be resolved, School Board of Independent District 271 approves new policy 457, respectful workplace.
Second.
I couldn't see you. You're behind Director Bergstrom was blocking my view.
I've got a big head.
Okay. Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, and members of the school board, I'm here to introduce a new policy called Respectful Workplace. The purpose of the new policy is to maintain a positive learning and working environment where individuals are treated with professionalism and respect. Policy states employees shall not be subjected to disrespectful behavior from coworkers, parents, guardians, or people doing the work in the district. There's an accompanying regulation that was reviewed and presented for information, and this ties into one of our core values in the district, which is respect, and actually teamwork as well, and a few others. But any questions?
Yeah, I think this is a good policy that we're adding. Last year, we strengthened our policy regarding visitors and some behavior on how visitors and parents are speaking to teachers. And we have already policies in place about how students are speaking to teachers, but we don't really have any policies talking about how teachers are speaking to other teachers or coworkers to other coworkers. So I think it's good to have this in policy and just to be mindful of everyone needs to be respecting everyone else, and if they're not, then we'll have to follow some of these disciplinary actions. But just to maintain that we expect respect between everybody in our school buildings. Doesn't matter if they're teachers or parents or visitors or contractors or everybody. So I like this policy.
Just to clarify, when it refers to staff, we're talking about everybody, school board, superintendent, administrator, HR director.
Everybody.
Everybody. It's everybody. It's not just teachers or
Nope.
custodians or
It's the whole school
transportation.
community, all connections. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there more questions on this? I thought I saw a couple people leaning in.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. I like this. I'm a little sad that you would have to sort of reiterate what we would expect from adults, but we felt the need. It's in writing, and I like this.
It sounds like a silly question, but does that include any kind of media harassment?
Harassment.
Social media
Social media, yeah. Online,
cyberbullying.
cyberbullying.
Actually, it would have to be considered. It would, yeah.
I think that's, it's so real nowadays that even us adults are exposed to that too,
Right.
even from our own colleagues.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be under definition 1B. I suppose it'd be includes but not limited to any form of intimidation, reprisal, or harassment.
Yep.
Glad you're reading our policy.
I'm kidding, I read all of this.
And the regulations.
And the regulations.
Any further questions?
So I just want to hear our student rep over there. What is your take on something like these type of policies, respectful workplace?
Well, obviously it's important. Everyone should respect each other, especially adults, because they should know better. So.
Well said. On that note.
Thank you. Amen. Call this meeting closed. No.
Nice to have a student rep on the board. Good job, Al.
We'll put that in a parenthetical expression.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? No. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Oh. Don, would you like to also vote?
Aye.
That way we can have a 7-0. Thank you very much. And that brings us to 510. Revised policy 510.4, participation of non-enrolled students in Bloomington Public Schools. Would someone like to read that resolution while Mr. Melby?
Mr. Chair. Be it resolved, School Board of Independent School District 271 approves revised policy 510.4, participation of non-enrolled students in Bloomington Public Schools activities.
Second. Teacher.
Not to be a pain, but is it 510.5 or 510.4?
510.4.
510.4.
It wasn't a pain.
You're on the wrong one.
Oh.
We have both of those. That's next.
Oh, sorry.
4 is before 5.
Okay.
Superintendent Fujitaki, sorry, tired. Chair Oliva, members of the board, thank you for allowing us to come and talk about these policies tonight. I brought Dr. Jenna Mitchler with me. Jenna is the lead secondary curriculum and instruction specialist and also has the misfortune of trying to get her superintendent's license done and has hours to complete, so she's helped me immensely with these policies, and she's really good at it. So I thank Jenna for coming tonight. Although this first one was more mine and the ADs than Dr. Mitchler's. So this policy really just seeks to provide guidance for administrators, staff, parents regarding children who are not enrolled in our schools but seek to participate in our school activities. Updated and provides clarity about non-enrolled students and Minnesota State High School League activities and non-high school league activities, and just gives guidance to the schools to make those decisions and help families understand those decisions. So administration recommends approval of the policy.
Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming. Thanks for staying. Didn't mean to keep you up too late. Just a quick question. Do you know just a ballpark figure how many students this represents?
It's a very small number. I don't want to misrepresent what it is, but by small I mean maybe a couple hands. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay. Then we'll go to 510.5. Would someone like to read that resolution?
Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves revised policy 510.5, shared time students.
Second.
And board and superintendent, this policy proposes to address non-public homeschooled students be enrolled part-time in the school district. It was reviewed by the Policy Review Committee. The draft that was made, no significant edits were made. And because I've invited Dr. Mitchell, I'd like to let her comment on these as well. So.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. So I just wanted to mention the policy is really quite short. You can see that there were 2 changes that were talked about with the policy committee to the regulation. So I just wanted to make note that those have been changed in this document that you see. So it is in the regulation, but under 1A, there was a section under number 1 that said approved homeschools, and we discussed in the policy meeting and decided that approved homeschools really wasn't a vocabulary that's used. Really what we would say is that the schools are in compliance with the Minnesota compulsory instruction law. So that number 1 under A was just changed to reflect that vocabulary. And then the second change under the regulation, you would see under D2. So we had verbiage there that said homeschool principal. when it mentioned enrollment should be directed to. And we talked about how with a homeschool there really isn't a principal. What we meant to say there was that the student or the family would talk with the principal of the school in which they would have enrolled. So we changed that wording to say the principal of the district school where the enrollment is desired. So 2 changes for clarification, and those have been made since we met last.
Dr. Mitchell, I have a question based on that change there. When you said you changed it to the enrollment is desired. So is homeschool students, can they just pick and choose whatever school that they wanted to attend to? And
They would need to choose, they would need to enroll in the school for the school that they would have been enrolled in if they were, based on where they live. And if they desire to be enrolled in the other school outside of the area where they live, they can do that as well, but they need to follow the same process that a student would use who is currently attending our school district.
okay, is that specified anywhere in there? Because I don't want people to get the impression that, they can go to whatever school they want and just, forego our inter-district transfer policy and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It is spelled out, and they have to follow the inter-district transfer policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's under A3 is where you'll notice it in the second paragraph of A3.
Except as noted below.
All right, sorry I didn't catch that in your revision when I looked this over this past weekend until you said it, and then it kind of stuck out to me. I was like, it's desired, so they can just go wherever.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chair.
That's because you get way down in the details of the regulations.
Once again, thanks for coming. I'm going to ask the same question I did the last time. Do we have a ballpark figure how many students this one represents?
No, but I can get one for the board and have that sent out. Again, it's not a large number.
Not a big one. Okay. Just want to. It's just good to know in my feeble brain what numbers we're talking about.
I think when we discussed this at the committee meeting, it was like in the 1s and 10s and not in the hundreds or thousands.
That's right.
Yep.
Just want to say thanks. This, having been around a long time, back in '99 when this was first introduced, there was a totally different game, in a sense, that was played. Now that we're revising this in 2017 with MSBA's emphasis and different things like that too, we have found that there are students, homeschool students especially, that maybe want to take some art, music, or whatever classes at the high school, and so they have this opportunity. And high school league activities sometimes is a draw also, because we're always looking for a great three-point shooter in basketball. And if they're at homeschool or wherever, we certainly want to recruit them into our Bloomington public schools. But facetiously, there are the families that have played in our summertime sports and so forth like that. They get to know the kids, get to know their friends, and then they want to participate in some of the activities that we have in the high schools. And so it is. But it's not more than 20 or so like that. Never has been. Thank you for letting me share that, Mr. Chair.
Sure, we have about 97 more of these, so I'm just going to go ahead and take a vote now. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? None? Okay, that one passes. Let's move on to 606. Would someone like to read that resolution? Director Steigoff,
I
please.
can do that. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves revised policy 606, instructional materials selection.
Second.
Thanks again. We updated the policy, brought it for the board policy committee to take a look at, and I'll let Jenna speak to how that process looked.
Yep, so we had 3 major changes that were made to the policy before it went to the policy committee. So the policy committee has seen these changes and approved them or given informal approval in advance, but I wanted to point them out to you anyway. So on the first page of the policy, the contact person was changed to assistant superintendent or designee. So you'll see that change made, and it's reflected throughout the policy. So anywhere where it had been mentioned that someone else would be the contact person, it had been changed to assistant superintendent or designee. The other change was under purpose. So in the past, it had said selection of textbooks, and instructional materials. And we've found that we're moving away from a focus on textbooks alone and would like to think more of our instructional materials, particularly because a lot of the textbooks that we rely on have some gaps where we would see our instruction related to standards not necessarily always being met. So we would like to think of all of our materials as one comprehensive package. So we're removing textbooks there and referring to them as instructional materials. The third change that came up was in 3B, so responsibility of selection. Under B, number 2, we added the word culture. So we need to consider the needs, age, culture, and maturity of the students. So this is reflecting some of the new curriculum work that we're doing with the curriculum review teams this year and the team that I work with in curriculum and instruction. We're trying to focus our PD with teachers around looking for cultural bias in curriculum materials. And we're trying to help teachers find ways to curate and create culturally relevant, culturally respectful materials for their students. So we added the word culture there. So those were the 3 big changes to the policy. There was one change made to the regulation after we met as a policy committee meeting. So that would be in section E on page 2 of the regulation. It's just a small change. In the past, that section, I'm sorry, it's number 1 under E, had said with special emphasis on, so we would be working with curriculum with special emphasis on, and then listed different ethnicities of peoples, and we instead changed that to say cultures including but not limited to. We wanted to move away from focusing with emphasis on certain groups and trying to be more inclusive in our language. So are there any questions on those changes?
No, it was a good discussion when you brought this to policy committee. I think we spent a good chunk of time talking about this one, and I thought it was a good discussion.
Chair, I just want to say thanks. I appreciate the energy, the effort that goes into the language before it gets to the policy committee and then the work done by the policy committee. The words that you've changed here make a significant difference. And we were talking to our middle school students for the Student Advisory Council before this meeting, and we mentioned that one of the things that the board does is go over policies and why do we change them. And I referenced the policy that the state had on the books for a number of years where it was against the law to park your horse within 100 yards of the front door of the Capitol. And I think they took that off the books somewhere in the 50s. So it's good that we go through these things and we refresh them and update them and modernize them.
So I'll echo, it was a good discussion. One of the things when I go through this, and I don't know if it's just the lens that I see the world through, but I want to make sure that if we're trying to be inclusive, that we are actually inclusive. And oftentimes, by attempting to be inclusive, we unintentionally exclude other groups. Say, okay, well, we have to make sure we are including this group, so then we'll sort of hyper-focus and ignore this other group over here or group over on our left. So I think the change of wording, although it's slight, it makes for me, it makes a big difference in the direction that this policy takes, and that the emphasis on having the District Diversity Advisory Council really go through this and review this and make sure that we are actually being inclusive, as I mentioned before with the American Indian Parent Advisory Council, that this can be some really meaningful work. So thank you very much. Is there any other discussion?
Uh-oh. I don't think it's a huge thing, but when you took textbooks out of the purpose section, you still left it in other sections.
Uh-oh. I didn't, how did I not catch that? I should be fired.
I move that we fire the...
You move that we fire the board chair? I hope we don't get a second.
Oh, we did. So can you go through what I'm seeing it in responsibility of selection 3B in reviewing textbooks? It's probably in other spots. Can you strike that and insert instructional materials? Was that your intent to take textbook, the word out?
We could do that and make that change. When we're doing the curriculum review adoption, we are looking at textbooks right now, and we are not purchasing pieces of instructional materials, but I think that would be an interesting thing for us to consider with our team.
Do you guys feel that the way the policy stands is fine, or do you want to postpone and review and bring back?
Or just amend?
I would vote to amend and go from there.
Okay, I mean, so can you make those amendments?
Yeah.
Like right now, you're good with that?
Where it
So-
says textbook, we would
Place instructional material?
just say instructional materials, because that includes textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay,
Or just delete textbooks from
Correct.
reference.
yep.
okay.
So would you like to make that motion?
I will make a motion to reflect the change just mentioned by
Second.
Assistant Superintendent. Second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the amendment? None?
Good catch,
All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now any discussion on the motion as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving this motion as, this motion as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries. Thank you. This takes us to, I believe we're at 601.1. Procedure for handling question materials. Who would like to read this one?
Mr. Chair, be resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves revised policy 606.1, procedure for handling questioned materials.
Second.
Thank you again. Again, did some updating to this policy, had a good discussion, I think, with the Board Policy Committee, and I'll ask Dr. Mitchell to highlight any changes to that policy.
Yeah, thanks. So we didn't make a whole lot of changes to this policy. Again, as mentioned in a couple of the other policies, the contact person was changed to say assistant superintendent or designee, and then that was changed throughout. And then the other change was that at the end of the regulation, there was a flow chart that was really quite redundant because all of it was mentioned in the regulation itself. So we talked in the policy committee meeting to eliminate that flow chart, and it seemed to make the most sense to do that. And those were the only changes that were made.
Any questions, comments? My comment at the meeting is I have actually been on one of the parents who have been part of this, because what happens is if someone requests for us to look at a material, if they question some material, they have to make an advisory group within the school, and part of that is to include parents, and I've actually been on one of those before. And so I said that the policy seems to be working pretty well, because we went through it and went smoothly, and we gave our feedback, and that was that. So I would also say we should approve this. So any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 606.1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, it carries. Okay, so that brings us to 606.2, Instructional Material Center Circulation of Materials. Who'd like to read this one?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves of the deletion of policy 606.2, Instructional Materials Center, Circulation of Materials.
Can I get a second? Okay, we have a second.
Thanks again. With recent construction, if you've been back in the area where the teachers on special assignment are leading the curriculum instruction area, it used to be that kind of area and a library, basically, of materials. We've really cleaned up. The library needed updating, and when we updated it, we realized we didn't really need to have that library anymore. We've got a lot of things that we do through technology these days. And single copies of in-use material still exist in the curriculum center, and they can be accessed through our team, basically. It's not a mandatory policy, and we just think in updating the work that we're doing in curriculum instruction, we don't need this policy anymore. Anything to add, Dr. Mitchell? Or?
Yeah, the only thing I might add is that in the past, community members and staff were able to come and check out materials to take with them for review, hence the circulation part of the policy. But I think, now we still have one copy of everything. Community members are free to come in and take a look through the materials. Staff members can do the same. It's just that we're not checking the materials out to people to take with them.
That's a good point, because typically we share textbooks and/or instructional materials with homeschools also. So now how do they?
We would still meet those
Supplement it.
requirements. We just work with them separately from this policy, basically.
All right.
Any more questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, and the motion carries. And I believe we skipped 609, brings us to policy 550, student handbooks.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District number 271 approves the deletion of student handbooks. No, I'm sorry. Approves the deletion of policy 550, student handbooks. I wanted to inject.
Second.
We have a second by Director Bartoletta. Okay.
Thank you. We, again, had a robust conversation, I think, at the policy committee meeting about this particular request to remove or delete policy 550. It really, if you looked at it, was a policy that didn't have much meat in the policy area. It was mostly regulation, which speaks to kind of an operational thing that the school district does. We will continue to have student handbooks in all of our buildings. Being able to nimbly update those things and look at how we present them to parents is going to be a benefit. And really, that was the discussion. I know that there's some concern that if we don't have it as a policy, will schools continue to have to do handbooks? The answer to that is yes, and I would encourage the board to, revisit this down the road, and if the need arises and we feel like we need to revive the policy, we could certainly do that. But the recommendation from administration and after the policy committee meeting was to go ahead and delete this policy.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. We happen to have a student sitting at our table. I'm just curious. I'm going to put you on the spot, Allie. What do you think? Will this impact your daily life?
No.
Where's your handbook?
Okay.
Do you have your handbook with you?
She's got it
We
memorized.
always have to, every year we have to go through the handbook like in homeroom, and kids just get super mad because it's the same thing every year, and they just sit there and listen to the teacher like read it to them. I don't think anyone even listens. Well, I mean, some do. I do. But.
Of course.
One of them. I'm sure she could quickly access it online right now if she wanted to as well.
So as Mr. Melby was saying, that we had a robust discussion on this, and this is actually, we didn't come to an agreement on this policy. I was of the opinion that we should keep the policy, and the other two members were okay with deleting it. And by our policy committee rules that we set forth when we created it, that if two members are in agreement with the administration, then it would move to the full board. Just to speak for why I'm against getting rid of this policy, I think that when we look at our policies, they're pretty much a reflection of what we value. I mean, we have a lot of policies that are there because of the statutes and they're mandated, but the other ones are there because somewhere along the line, the school board thought that was a good idea to have that in policy so that they could weigh in and have an opinion. If we remove this policy, what we're saying as a school board is we no longer have an opinion on student handbooks, and that we are deferring that solely to the administration. So administration tells us now that we're not getting rid of handbooks, we're going to go and keep them, but what about a year from now? What about 5 years from now? What about the next administration? They could come in and say, well, we're getting rid of these student handbooks, and the school board would have no opinion on the matter because we have removed this policy. So I agree with Mr. Melby that there's some wording with this policy that needs to change, that maybe this could be updated, but I would not want to get rid of the student handbook policy because I think it ensures that our district will continue to have them. But that's my take on it.
I guess I would agree. I'm concerned that if we take it out of policy, then how do I know for sure that down the road that it will remain? If there's things that need to be updated, I think that could definitely be done. We could send it back for updating. The other thing, one of the questions I had when this came up, I wondered, I did have a question, we are still printing a copy in paper for all the students when they're going over them, or they're going over them online in their classrooms, or maybe that's a question for...
I think that stopped like my sophomore year. Like I remember getting them for 2 years, and then they just became available online for sure this year, maybe last year.
Okay, that was my question. I just wanted to find out where we were with that.
Yeah, we're mostly digital student conduct guide the same
Okay.
way. Yep.
And then if a student, for whatever reason, couldn't access the digital, they could get a copy, though. I mean, that could be provided for
Any
that,
families who would like that, we
Okay.
give that to them, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, wait on the chair. Call on somebody.
I was just going by whoever started first.
Yeah, I know. I was initially
Looking at policies.
kind of concerned as well as, what we, oh my gosh, deleting this policy. But then you said at the beginning when you were explaining that, you will still make sure that the students will get that information, right? Students and parents. Do parents get this kind of information as well? Do they get a printed copy or?
If requested, they'll get a printed copy. We
Requested.
share where to find it online.
Right. Because,
yeah.
I think my biggest concern here is kind of making sure that that information is sent and that we stress the importance of some specific policies as well. Some certain things that are expected from the kids. I know that the kids don't like to spend a whole hour at the beginning of the year, going over this student handbook and the expectations and everything else. But if there's other ways that we can, or that we make sure that all the administrators in all different buildings kind of address the importance of certain specific things so that the kids don't get in trouble. And there's never this saying, oh, I never heard of that, or I didn't know, nobody told me, et cetera, because it's not in policy. Just to avoid issues.
Yep, I think that's a good point, and our kind of supplementary student conduct guide calls out certain policies that are most relevant to behaviors and things like that as well.
Right, most
Yep.
relevant. Mm-hmm.
The student supplementary,
Student conduct guide.
student conduct guide, is that just a general school?
A paper printed version that was shared with all the schools, and a few years ago made the decision to go strictly digital with that as well, and it's shared with students.
Because at the beginning of the year, don't they have whatever, there's some orientation, drug and safety and all of that sort of stuff? Do they go to the student handbook then?
We always do it in homeroom, I know. So
So
we do it
there-
like the first 2 homerooms of the year because it takes like a long time.
So there is that actual oral presentation to the students so that they know the
Yeah.
rules.
As you can hear from our student board representative, it's always highly anticipated and appreciated.
You read that out of what she said?
Sarcasm, I'm sorry.
For 40-some years, so I think he can be the one to ensure that
To make sure.
there's still a handbook of some sort.
Mr. Chair? Just quickly, I wanted to respond to, Tom, your comments. I know that the board can and does and should have an opinion on anything. It doesn't have to be a policy. So I would hope that if the board wanted to bring conversation to the table, it shouldn't take a policy to bring the conversation back to the table. I understand what you're saying about keeping the policy, and when I first saw this, I had some reservations as well. I have two sons in high school, and I'm not sure that they share all of the high school students' opinions about handbooks, but they mirror somewhat what Ally is saying. I do not want to lose sight of this. I'm okay with the deletion of this, but I'm okay with it knowing that as a board member and future board members will have the opportunity to bring this conversation back to the table anytime they want. So,
Well, we would have opportunity to bring the conversation back, but we wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to bring the policy back. It'd be harder to make the policy and to get rid of once you get rid of it. Right now, the policy exists. So if, say, a future administration gets rid of handbooks and the school board says, hey, well, we want handbooks, so we want a policy. Well, then you're going against administration to recommendation to make a policy. I think it's more difficult seeing that happen. When, if you are in favor of having student handbooks, we have a policy right here that guarantees it. They have to have handbooks, they have to be updated, they have to include all these policies, all these regulations.
well, I understand what you're saying. I don't think it would be that difficult. If you're looking at numbers, it only takes 4 votes. You know, if you want to have that policy back sometime, if we feel that we're straying, if something has happened that we need the policy that says we have to have a handbook back, it shouldn't be that hard to bring a policy back. You know, we can hang on to this language.
If we didn't have the policy already, I probably wouldn't have the same feeling. Like, I value recess. We don't have a recess policy. But if we did have a recess policy and the administration said, we're going to get rid of that policy, but don't worry, we'll keep recess, I'd say, you're out of your mind. I'm not voting to get rid of that because it's something that I value, and I want to make sure that is insured for, you know, forever, for the next 20, 30 years. By getting rid of it, I don't have that guarantee. All I have is, well, I mean, you can say a gentleman's handshake, you know, a gentleman agreement, you know, we'll keep it. So, yeah, that's true today. That might not be true tomorrow, might not be true in a month, might not be true in 2 years. And then once it's gone, then it's gone. And then I have to convince 3 other people to bring the policy. I can't even convince 3 other people to prevent from getting rid of the policy. So, what, like, am I going to have convincing 3 people to bring on the policy? So, I think it's a difference of opinion.
Well,
It's within my values that I'm not going to, if it's in my value, I don't want to get rid of. So, I don't see me changing from my.
I like recess, and I think it would be that'd be a much bigger conversation.
Director Stagoff.
I apologize, just have one more question. My notes say that this is not a mandatory policy by MSBA, but it doesn't really say why it is suggested be deleted. So I'm trying to understand, well, why do we need to delete it? We already have it. Can't we just keep it? We're doing it. Why does it need it? So I'm a little confused on that part of it, I guess.
Well, as I maybe didn't state really clearly at the beginning, if you look at the policy as it currently exists, it's hard to even call it a policy. I guess if the board wanted us to, you know, retool that and make it more policy-like, that could be something that could be done. But as it currently exists, it's really 95% regulation, which you know, is operational for us to make it work.
All right, thank you for clarifying that.
And I think also, Mr. Chair, that we've been following MSBA's models on a lot of our updates and upgrades and everything else. And if the MSBA suggests that it's not mandatory, I guess I would certainly support that position.
Okay, so I'll throw out one thing to possibly try to sway Vice Chair Bennett. Because I'm of the same opinion. I say, well, if we say we aren't going to have, or we're deleting the policy, then that means that we don't necessarily have to have student handbooks. The thing is, when I look at this and I say, okay, the purpose of the policy is to make sure that we have student handbooks, and then you go down into the regulation, says in the student handbooks we're going to include references to all these other policies down here, like one's 413. Well, see, in policy 413, it already says this is going to be in the student handbook. So by default, and if I find it, it's in policy 413. Of course, I went off the page. But anyways, yeah, so policy 413, in one of the sections of the policy, it actually says, this will be presented to students in the student handbook. So it's almost like they have to have a student handbook because our policy says you have to put this in the student handbook. So I feel like they can't really get rid of the handbooks altogether because we already have other policies that have hooks in it that say will be in the handbook. And honestly, when the board, who was here, Sorum and Bartolotta, they were here when this was made, right? So what they were saying is when this was made, here's were the things that we want to make sure students were aware of: harassment, violence, weapon-free schools, search student lockers, etc. When I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at the student handbook, the things that I was looking for is school start time, when's breakfast, when's release, what's the earliest drop-off. And so the things that I care about in the student handbook as a parent are not these policies, because these policies, they should, in the student handbook, they should be exactly the same as they are on the website, and I'll just go to the website and find the actual policy on harassment, violence, weapon-free schools. And so unless we were going to say, the purpose of this policy is to create a handbook for parents and students so that they know the general rules of the school, they know start and stop times, and we were very specific and prescriptive in what we wanted in the policy outside of, we want a policy to give people notice of other policies. Then I would say, yeah, we should absolutely keep it. But since the things that the board has said through this regulation that are valuable in the student handbook are things that we already do, and we already say in those policies they will be in the handbook, I think we could get rid of this and it would be fine. So I was with you, and then I talked myself out of being with you so that I'd feel better getting rid of the student handbooks, realizing that they're still going to have to tell me when I can drop off my kid. They're still going to have to tell me what time breakfast is. They're still going to have to tell me what the release time is somehow. And so, policy or not, I'm still going to get the information I need as a parent. Any other discussion? Do we need to do a roll call? Maybe?
Probably. I'm voting no. It's a
Okay,
problem.
so all those in favor of deleting policy 550, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
It's 6 to 1. Aye. Okay,
5-2.
it's 5-2. Director Stagoff and Director Bennett opposing. And we will move on to what's next, 707. Thank you also, everyone, for the robust discussion and being civil. As we're adults, and as Ms. Anderson says, we know better.
Since Ms. Anderson's watching us, we're on our good behavior.
But I think that's what makes us a functional board.
Yeah.
No change to policy 707, or at least somewhat functional board anyways.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
be resolved, School Board of Independence School District 271 approves no change to policy 707, transportation.
Second.
Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, this policy was brought back to the board a few months back. In going through it recently, we found some issues within regulations that needed to be updated. We just brought it back to the board at this time to update those regulations.
So what are the big changes for this policy?
The change was that in practice and the board approval back in 2009, that we changed secondary walk areas to 1.25 miles. That was not updated in the policies regulations.
Okay. Well, I was trying to attempt a joke there, because it says no change to policy. So I was saying, what are the big changes? Because I thought, at this late hour, we need some humor. But apparently, you're even too tired to get my humor at this late hour.
Any other questions? I'll gavel you out. Any other questions? Not hearing none. All those in favor of policy 707, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes, and that brings us to 806. Thank you. And up comes Tamara Sieve.
Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves revised policy 806, use of school facilities.
Second.
Chair Oliva, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, and listening audience. This policy was brought before the policy committee, and we went through the changes in the regulations. One minor change was added at the policy committee in section 1A, changing the word must to should. And the main policy regulation change was in section 2B, number 3, a clarification of fundraising with booster clubs and outside organizations. Any questions?
I'll just throw out clarification I brought up. One of the things we had put in there is you must, if you wanted to rent a space, you must submit your application at least 10 days in advance. But if you didn't, it also had what would happen if you didn't do it in front. And so I said, well, it either you have to or you don't. So we're just going to change it to should. And then if you don't, your request might be denied out of hand just because we don't have enough time to respond to it. The idea was someone would think that if their request met all of the other guidelines, that it should then be approved. But we just said sometimes we don't have enough time to process it. That's why we're changing it to should be submitted 10 days prior to use. Any other questions?
Just a quick one, Tamara. I know that we use our buildings for a lot of different things. There's always seems to be something going on in the buildings. Is there any particular item that pops up a lot with respect to reserving the space, or?
Just not having enough for everyone during certain sports seasons. But I think our facilities are utilized. We have great relationships with the community. We try to accommodate the best that we can, but at certain times of year, it gets a little tight.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say part of why that came up for me is because I've actually requested to use facilities, like calling up, hey, can I get a space tomorrow? And they're like, well, usually you would want to do this, 2 weeks in advance. I say, yeah, I know, but can I get a space tomorrow? And then there have been times when they accommodated me and times when I didn't. But reading the policy, it was unclear, like, well, do you have to do it in advance or do you not? So I think that clarification will help people like me in the future. So all those in favor, or is there any other discussion? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Director Bennett is not here for that one.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Bennett, I should say. Thank you. And that brings us to Policy 303.
I was going to read it first. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves new Policy 303, Superintendent Selection.
Second.
The Minnesota School Board Association has a set of model policies. The Board Policy Committee Chair, Tom Bennett, brought this policy to the attention of his committee. The committee reviewed the policy and agreed to recommend adoption of this policy by the board.
Would you like to speak to this?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, I think we just want to be clear that we're passing this not because there's going to be a vacancy of superintendent anytime soon. It's just, just so that when there is, that we have procedures in place to kind of guide the board in the selection process of the new superintendent.
Right.
I think it's pretty my rationale for doing it.
And once again, it's an MSBA model policy. We've been going and reviewing some of those more and more and realizing that, yeah, maybe we should have one of those. And so it's always helpful to have that big resource, MSBA, so then that helps us with some policies that we don't necessarily have, or cleaning up some of the other ones too.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of Policy 303, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes, thank you. And that brings us now to item number 7 on the agenda. Yes.
Be resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves a cooperative sponsorship of Kennedy and Jefferson Girls Badminton Program effective with the 2016-17 school year.
Second.
Chair Oliva, board member, Superintendent Fujitaki. A little background on this. As you know, the Minnesota State High School League allows 2 or more member schools to form a cooperative membership of an activity or sport when student participation numbers at a school are not sufficient to field a team. Kennedy and Jefferson High Schools have agreed to a cooperative sponsorship of girls badminton program for the 16-17 school year. It starts very soon. That's why I'm bringing it to you tonight. Kennedy, with the greater number, would serve as the host school. We currently have a number of cooperative agreements already in the school district: alpine skiing competition, cheerleading, dance, girls golf, girls hockey, gymnastics, Nordic ski, and wrestling. Metro West Conference has approved this request, and administration recommends approval of the cooperative agreement.
So currently, if I'm reading this right, there's 21 students at Kennedy and 0 at Jefferson, because it's not being offered at Jefferson currently?
This was for the previous year. So it's not offered at Jefferson. We don't have enough students who are interested at this point to field a team. That's why we're looking for the cooperative agreement. But this year's team will have Jefferson students on it.
Okay, so it won't be 0. It'll be
Yep.
more than that. That's good. Badminton's a great sport.
Mm-hmm.
I love playing badminton, hitting the little birdie and all that. So
Yeah, it's becoming more popular, I think.
Oh, yeah. Nice. You like to hit the birdie?
Thanks for sharing.
Dr.
Just
Bergstrom?
quickly, I echo Tom's sentiments. So today's badminton is not your grandfather's badminton or grandma's badminton. This game is just absolutely amazing to watch. just to see how they take these shots. You really have to watch. So if you're listening to my voice, look up some professional badminton on YouTube or whatever and see what those people do. It's just amazing to watch. So I'm obviously in favor of this.
Then it's also a good practice or good policy that we do try and incorporate seeking a cooperative agreement, because we believe it's in the best interest of the student athletes at both schools. So when we have some of those sensitive areas or something like that, that we do want to partner now rather than try and struggle later.
Yep.
Good.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of this cooperative agreement, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it approves. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Which brings us to number 8, report of closed sessions. Okay, so, report of closed sessions for negotiations. The school board, superintendent, and members of cabinet met in closed session on January 23rd and February 21st for the purpose of discussing negotiations for all bargaining units. No school board action was taken or required. That brings us to number 9, legislative priorities. Who'd like to read that one?
Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves a legislative priority for the 2017 legislative session that supports an increase in the state's basic formula allowance, that's per pupil funding, by at least the underfunding portion of $626.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
I
Would you like
don't
to
know
say a
if
few
anybody
words?
have any questions, but we pretty much talked about this during our retreat. Only thing I think it would be important for the audience to understand why, and so I'm going to ask the superintendent to.
Right. The board has a standing board legislative committee. The members are Chair Nellie Corman, Don Steigoff, and Rick Oliva. The committee's role is to be politically active by monitoring the legislature and legislation, and also taking action with respect to both of those, and also engaging our legislators. Every year, the board legislative committee makes recommendations on a legislative platform to the board, and the board takes action on that. In the past, there are a number of items on that legislative agenda. This year, the committee has decided to focus their attention on just one thing, and that is improving the general education formula. And that's the recommendation that's contained in this resolution, that it be increased by $626, which is the difference between what the general ed formula is now and what it should have been if we had been given an inflationary increase on that amount. So,
Over what time period? Is it like?
03 to 2017?
Yes.
So what would it be percentage-wise? I know usually we ask for 2% or something like that, so would this be more like?
that is about a 9% increase.
Oh, okay, oh, so not much at all.
When this was brought before the legislative committee, it would initially, because other districts were asking for 2%, 2.5%, and they were asking for, basically, I think, for what they thought they would get. And what I threw out there is I said, well, why don't we just ask for what it is? The idea is if you say, we're going to ask the state for 2 and 2 because we don't think they'll give us any more than that, then the state can come back and say, well, they only need 2 and 2, and so they'll be happy with 1 3/4. And so I said, well, if the real difference is 9, then we should make a case and say, look, even though everybody knows that that's not going to happen, we should just say, this is what we're asking for, because this is the difference between what we would have had as inflationary increase versus not. And so if you give us the whole amount, that's great, but this is where we stand. So 2 and 2, who knows what they'll actually give us, but that was the rationale that I gave at the time for asking for an increase above what everybody else was asking for.
Can I just say one thing? Sure. I just want to make sure that the public understands that In 2003, there was a change made by the state in how public funding comes to us, and so that is where this what is an underfunding gap, where it is not it is not giving us the money that is adjusted for inflationary gap, and so. I just want people to understand that this has been a change, and a lot of people maybe don't understand why we make the budget cuts and why we have to do the things that we do. It's because that we've had this, schools across the state have had this extreme underfunding, and so the gap, as we said, is now up to $626 per pupil, and every year it continues to grow. We have a chart that shows the growth, and it's been growing since 2003. So, thank you.
The other point here too is that this platform has been shared with the Bloomington Advisory Council. We did not have the opportunity because of time to meet again with them, but it was shared via email, and then we kind of waited for some input, and they agree with this. So. This is why we're bringing it now for approval, and we'll be continuing our meetings with BAC this coming Thursday.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to board member reports. Who would like to start us off?
Mr. Chair, being that it's 10 o'clock and, we still have another study session to go to, I'm going to skip my report until the next meeting, and I would encourage other board members to do the same.
I agree.
Not a resolution.
Thank you.
I'm okay with that. I wrote a short one because we were going to go long, so.
Ditto.
I just wanted to acknowledge Miss Abby and Miss Isabel, who wrote very strongly worded messages to the board to consider homework and school start times. And Miss Abby, actually, I will cover up the name, had a petition go around the school and had students sign it to discuss school start times. And all of these students agree that it should start later. So I will write a letter responding, saying that I shared that information with the board, and we will follow up as we are able. So,
Mr. Chair, that was a student named
that was
Abby?
a student.
Okay.
Yep, middle school students.
Many of our students come from Meredith Abbey's class over at Jefferson.
Oh, yeah, no,
And
this
they
is a
call her
different,
Miss Abby.
yeah, this would be, I didn't want to say a last name for student privacy, but Miss Abby, a student, wrote me a letter, and Miss Isabel, another student, middle school student, wrote me a letter about school start times and homework. So,
We didn't get it, just he got it.
was everyone foregoing the report? Superintendent, did you have some?
Yes, I had one thing, in
Okay.
the interest of time. Administration requests a motion to establish a closed session upon conclusion of the regular meeting of the school board meeting on March 13, 2017. The meeting will be closed as permitted by Minnesota State Statute 13D.03 to discuss the district's labor negotiation strategy related to the district's negotiations with all bargaining groups.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of the closed session March 13th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I say one thing? I'm sorry to, but as part of the Education Foundation of Bloomington, I just want to remind everyone that the early bird pricing has been extended through March 10th. So get your reservations in now. Thank you.